third also lateral collateral ligament. And if you are faced with a situation where the back is also broken, you may require to put a brace. Your surgical strategy should be, don't try to put the screws in the center. Instead, go to the side, those are the pillars. Reinforce with screws in multi-direction, but keep the center free. Why? Because in case you are faced with an AVN, those screws are going to be painful. So if you put the screws from the side, those screws won't be painful. And coming to epicondyle again, you may need to buttress with a lateral flange plate and screws going there. Does close reduction have a role for simpler fractures? Yes, if you can get a close reduction and you can maintain it, they heal well. But when you need to do operative, you will come and see some cases. So this is a case when you see there is a large chunk capitulum and part of the trochlea. It's a shear fracture, and if you see the zone 5, there is a lot of comminution there. So only upward screws won't work in this case. You need to construct something like this. You need a plate at the back and locking screws going into the front. Coming to another case of more severity, you have a lateral epicondyle, you have a capitulum, you have a trochlea. So it's a grossly comminuted one. That's the approach. 2 windows. You reconstruct the capitulum and the trochlea, use a locking plate, and also buttress the epicondyle. And you get a good result if you address all the fragments. Going to further, if the fragments are too small, if you see here, the fragments are too small and comminuted, but it's a young guy, then you need to do something that is called a lost K-wire technique. And if you see here, on table reconstruction of the broken fragments taken out, reconstructed on the back table, use a lost K-wire technique and reinforce with double plates, and you can get a good joint out of a bad situation. When do you do a transolecranon approach? If you see here, the medial pillar, that is the medial part of the trochlea, is now getting involved. And if you see the CT here, it's been tilted. If you use only a lateral approach, you will not be able to address that thing, which is the key part for your rest of the reconstruction. So, you use a transolecranon approach and you get a good joint and good function. Another case, similar, you see both sides, a shear fracture, so it requires an approach which you can visualize 360 degrees and fixation on both the sides. And you fix the lateral pillar as well as the medial pillar, and you can get a good joint out of a bad situation. Now, this is a really bad case. A 17-year-old young lady, she fell down. If you see the displacement, it's grossly displaced. But because she's 17, we had to give her a chance. That's when we open. Again, what you use a lost K-wire technique, back table reconstruction of those parts, put it back. Because the bones are small, you might need to use plates from the distal and radius set, the 2.7 and 2.4 plates. That's what we used, that's how we could reconstruct, and that's the time when she came for removal, and that's her follow-up. Now, this is an interesting case. Another surgeon had identified the fracture, but he only fixed the lateral part. He couldn't approach the what is called the medial part of the trochlea, and that was flipped and preventing flexion. If you see the CT, you can identify here that that's the fragment which is incongruence, and that's what blocking the movement of the elbow. This case requires a direct medial approach to that fragment. So you take care of the ulnar nerve and do a direct approach, erasing the flexor pronator mass. You can see here the fragment which was obstructing, which has now been removed, that's on the table, and now you can see that the joint has become congruent. Now we need to fix this fragment back, and it's been fixed back, and you can get a good joint with good joint spaces. Going further, Some might say you can do a combined medial and lateral approach. I rarely do it. I generally prefer the transolecranon. But if you are doing a combined medial and lateral approach, I would suggest you call your friend, another orthopedic surgeon, so both of you can work through both the different windows and get a good reduction. And that's how you can do it. You might require suture anchors to put down your flexor pronator mass after you have erased it. In elderly, where the osteoporosis is too much, salvage may not be possible, and you might need to do something that is called a hemiarthroplasty. That's a 2-tier implant. It's a hemiarthroplasty. Now, this is an extreme procedure, but it's in a paper I read up. If you have a lot of combination, you only need to see whether your medial part of the trochlea is good. If it's good, you can excise the radial head and excise all the other things and use the radial head as part of the lateral column of the trochlea. That's how it can be reconstructed. And that's one of the X-rays put in that paper where they could show a good salvageable joint. Complications, AVN is the most feared but not frequent. Loss of reduction, malunion, stiffness, arthritis. Implant impeachment can be avoided if you plan your screw directions nicely, and the rates range from 10 to 30%. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Munish Patel. Next, I call upon
Capsulum, anterior capsule and muscular tendons around the elbow, and interosseous membrane form the secondary stabilizers at the elbow. Coming to the type of fracture dislocations that happen around the elbow, the radial head fracture with the LCL injury, translucent fracture dislocation. One is the equivalent, and the humerus shear injury with LCL and MCL injury, coronoid fracture with LCL tear. The more complicated injury is terrible triad injuries. What is terrible triad is that it was first described by Hotchkiss in 1996. It is the severe-most pattern of elbow fracture dislocation. It is a combination of posterior dislocation of the elbow, radial head fracture, and associated with coronoid fracture of the ulna. The terrible triad injuries are rare injuries, and they account for 70 to 90% of traumatic elbow dislocations. What is more controversy in the management of terrible triad injuries is that first thing is whether to fix the radial head or replace the radial head, whether to fix the coronoid or not to fix the coronoid, whether to use dual approach or a single approach is sufficient for the management of terrible triad injury. Inappropriately treated injuries can lead to persistent dislocation and post-traumatic arthritis. So coming to the treatment, there is no goal for any conservative management in terrible triad injuries, and the goal of the surgery is to obtain a concentric, stable reduction of the elbow, and we need to have a functional painless range of movements for proper functioning of the joint. The surgical treatment is, however, challenging in terrible triad injuries, and despite surgical skills, significant progress in the surgical skills, there are up to 45% of unsatisfactory results are possible. Up to 60% of patients can require secondary procedures. So one need to remember that the treatment is quite challenging in terrible triad injuries, and where the injury is quite severe. Whether to fix the radial head or replacement, replace the radial head fracture. If you look at the literature, there are authors who have told that there is no significant difference between the functional outcome between the replacement versus reconstruction. And there is a recent meta-analysis by Mohit Bhandari, who has come out and mentioned that replacement is better than fixation in most of the terrible triad injuries. So there is a controversy whether to fix the radial head or replace, which gives better result. So let me show you how we had the results in our institution. Between 2014 to 2018, we operated about 48 patients of terrible triad injuries, where all the three components are involved, and most of them are young male patients, and predominant mode of injury was road traffic accident. We followed the surgical protocol of using lateral approach for most of the patients. First step is to go and fix the coronoid fracture, and then look for the radial head fracture. If it is a marginally displaced fracture, we can use tapered screws. If it is up to 3 parts, we can prefer fixation. by locking plate. If it is 4 parts or more, we generally try to replace the radial head by using monoblock processes, and at the end LCL repair is done by using either suture anchor or ethicon or fiber wire. If you look at the radial head fracture pattern according to Mason type, most of them are type 3 and type 4, and type of fixation that we used were most of the 24 patients were fixed with locking plate, and 9 patients had head screws, 9 patients had replacement of the radial head. No fixation was done in 6 patients. If you look at the coronary fracture, most of them were type 1 and type 2, and no fixation was done in only 5 patients. Rest all patients required fixation. We used either suture anchor or endo button or cancellous screws in most of the patients. If you look at the functional outcome mean score, most of them above 75 is a normal, is a good score, and on average it was 95 in most of our patients, and average flexion of the elbow was about 130 degrees. Extension, most of our patients we had about on average 10 degrees of loss of extension, and we had a good range of pronation and supination as well. If you look at the complications, we didn't have any infections, and medial lateral instability was seen in 5 patients. Heterotopic oscillation was noticed in 10 patients, and ulnar nerve palsy was seen in 1 patient. When we compared the radial head procedure, replacement versus fixation and outcome, there was no it was not statistically significant in terms of outcome. Both had similar functional outcome at the end of 1 year of follow-up. If you look at the type of fixation of the coronoid versus the final outcome, either you use suture anchor, endo button, or cancellous screw, the final outcome is more or less same, and it is not statistically significant, which means that all the methods will function more or less equally. Let me show you some of the case examples where the radial head is fixed or replaced in our series. Here is a patient with radial head fracture communicated, and through lateral approach we exposed, and most of the fragments were lying outside, so they were brought out onto the table, reconstructed with multiple K-wax, and then plating was done. And before plating, after coronoid fixation, radial head fixation is done, and then LCL repair, and this went on to have a good result with good flexion and extension and rotation movements. Here is a patient with a terrible triad, which was irreducible due to intra-articular placement of the fracture fragments, and we had to go and by lateral approach and reconstruct the ligament structures. And here we used 2 drill holes and then passed from the posterior to the more grossly unstable elbow, where the radial head is multiple fragments. Sometimes even by reconstruction also we can have problems like this. Immediate post-op X-ray can show that it is dislocated. Either it may be because of the overstuffing of the radial head or not repaired the opposite side of the ligament structures. In those situations, we need to go back and apply the external fixator. We can use either dynamic or static external fixator. If you don't have a dynamic external fixator, static also is fine, which immobilizes the elbow in good amount of flexion, and 3 weeks later we can start the elbow movements. And this patient went on to have a partial subluxation of the humeral ulnar joint with mild arthrosis. One of this is a patient who had cancellous screw fixation, who had a prominence of the screw on the medial side, had a ulnar nerve palsy. Even though he had a good range of movements, he had ulnar nerve palsy, so we had to do ulnar nerve transfusion for this patient. And sometimes if the overstuffing of the radial head process is done, it can cause subluxation as well as arthrosis of the elbow joint. So, terrible triad injuries, both fixation and the replacement has got complications. One need to remember that we should not excise the radial head. There is no role for excision of the radial head in the current scenario, where both options are available. Fixation implants are available and replacement implants are available. There is no role for excision. If you excise the radial head, automatically the column support is lost, and the distal radial nerve joint also gets subluxed, and patient will have a difficulty in supination and pronation, and distal radial nerve joint pain also can be there for the patients. So this patient had an initial radial excision elsewhere and then presented to us with a dislocation. So ligament reconstruction was done again with prosthesis was placed so that the length was maintained. So to conclude, maximum efforts has to be placed to fix the radial head fracture, and if it is not possible, if the fragments are more than 3, we can it is better to replace it, and we can use monoblock prostheses which are locally available and which can fit into our Indian patients very well. And there is no role for excision, one need to remember. And we need to have a long-term study of the terrible triad injuries with radial head fixation versus replacement to know exactly what is the difference in future. And terrible triad is no longer so terrible nowadays if we follow the treatment algorithm very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Terrible triad, we all know this. We should know the stabilizers. Anteriorly, the most important is the anterior joint capsule and the brachialis. Laterally, it's a lateral collateral or lateral ulnar collateral ligament, and medially it is the medial collateral ligament, the anterior bundle. Posteriorly, not of much significance because you have got good triceps. It's a fall on the outstretched hand, valgus most of the times, and supination, posterolateral, rotatory instability, though there are variations. Why is it terrible? It's terrible because apart from the patients, many a times we as surgeons also are unaware of the problems. So, as well as there is a residual instability and stiffness even with the best of treatments in a terrible triad. That's the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, which is important. Medially it is the anterior bundle which gets attached over here to the sublime tubercle of the ulnar, proximal ulnar. So that is very important. On the proximal ulnar anteriorly, you have the attachment of the anterior joint capsule, which many a times gets evoked with the tip fractures. This is the brachialis and this is the anterior bundle which is attached. Whenever you have a terrible triad, it's not only bones, it's not just a terrible triad. It is an osteoligamentous injury. So you should know that there are the common extensors to be dealt with, the LUCL to be dealt with, and the medial collateral ligament also to be dealt with. Medially, you should remain below this line, and laterally, you should always remain below this line. These are the two approaches laterally. This is the Kaplan's, the first one, which goes between the extensor tendons, and the Cocker's, which goes between the muscular bellies of the ECU and the anconius. The key over here to the Cocker's is start from distal to proximal and follow the raphe between the two muscles. That's the way you expose the Cocker's. I use the Cocker's very often. Normally you have this. Whenever there is a valgus, supination, and it goes into further valgus, the ligament is stretched. Further valgus, trochlea hits on the coronoid and coronoid fractures. Capitulum hits on the radial head fractures. Lastly to go is the medial collateral ligament. Whenever it's a varus, which is also there, the varus goes for the stretching of the LUCL, trochlea hits the coronoid and coronoid fractures, and the last to go is the LUCL. Radial head may not get fractured, though you have a dislocation. So remember, even if your radial head is not fractured, it doesn't mean that it is not a terrible triad. The most important ligament, the LUCL, it fails last in posterolateral or the valgus stress, and the anterior bundle of the MCL fails last in a varus stress. Bony injury patterns are these. They can be these, a dislocation radial head coronoid, as well as a variation. A transolecranon fracture dislocation, that's a totally different topic in itself. It is an anterior or a posterior dislocation to a transolecranon. Whether to fix or replace, never excise. Coronoid fix or not to fix. Do we need to go medially? How big is the coronoid, that decides whether to go medially. Coronoid plating or MCL repair, that finally is dependent on our stability and whether to use an external fixator at the end of the surgery. Tip fractures are the commonest fractures seen because they are because of the valgus instability and they get evoked by the anterior bundle of the anterior capsule. So do not touch your radial head. Before touching the radial head, go laterally. From the lateral side, approach your tip. So before fixing or reconstructing the radial head, approach your tip of the coronoid, approach it, elevate all your structures from the lateral side up to the coronoid. It's a bit difficult, but then you can identify your anterior capsule by a shiny ligamentous structure using 2 drill holes, as my previous speaker has already talked about. Do this, and for that you may require an ACL jig, which has to be kept ready. Sometimes, many times, we do not have an ACL jig. It's fine. You can use your fingers as an ACL jig, and just target from dorsally of the olecranon, target it towards the coronoid. It may not reach the coronoid. These tip fractures, you may not engage it with sutures, but you are supposed to engage the capsule with the sutures. The capsule suturing is very important. You may not get a perfect reduction of your coronoid tip, but the capsule suturing is very important. If you have an endo button, it's fine. Otherwise, just suture it and take knots over there on the dorsal side of the ulna. You may use screws also. Radial head plating, always use a safe zone between the extension of lines from radial styloid to the Lister's tubercle. 2 mm plate or anatomically radial head contour plate is good enough. And this is a case where radial head was badly fractured, and this is a plating done. This was a plating done in the olden days when there were no radial head plates available. But look at this, the straight plates can cause overstuffing of the notch, sigmoid notch. And then there will be problem in supination and pronation. The radial head is shaped like this. It has got a double bend over here like this. So you need to bend your plates in a Z fashion if you have a straight plate. If you have an anatomically controlled plate, it's fine enough. This was a case when the radial head was fractured completely. 2 pieces came out in my hand. I put a plate outside and then put the thing inside, and with this plating. No matter if the radial head goes into non-union, it is acting as a spacer. That spacer effect is very important to fill in the void and for the ligament healing on both the sides. How you decide if replacement is there? You have to closely inspect your capitulum, match your radial head to the coronoid and the sigmoid notch, avoid overstuffing, width of the capitulum is seen. If you are in doubt, go smaller, no problem, but avoid overstuffing. This is the way, these are the sizers which are prepared for the radial head. Once you remove the radial head, the comminuted radial head can be put in this, and these are the sizers of various radial head. And this is the way you have to do it. They have got the stem has got a slight lateral bend. This is another case wherein there was a cerebral triad injury. He went ahead and did the coronoid suturing first, and then the radial head replacement, followed by LUCL reconstruction. Anteromedial fractures of the coronoid are a bit difficult to handle from the lateral side. So you need to know how to go medially by the Hotchkiss approach. Medial coronoid can be approached through the floor of the ulnar nerve. In fact, that's very easy. You have to just identify the floor of the ulnar nerve. But remember, after doing the medial side, you have to always see for the stability and approach the lateral collateral ligament and suture them also. That's the floor of the ulnar nerve, and all structures above the floor of the ulnar nerve have to be removed, have to be just elevated from the bone of the ulnar up to the coronoid. Once you do that, you land up on the coronoid, you denude the proximal ulna over here, land up on the coronoid, and that's the coronoid. You refix it then later on with this. I'll go ahead. One single posterior approach is also okay. It's a long posterior approach with 2 flaps medially and laterally. You can approach the medial side as well as the lateral side from both the sides. Look at this patient. There was a dislocation. He went ahead. A difficult and a different type of a fracture. We had the MRI diagnosis as coronoid process, partial tear of the common extensors. We went down, we sutured the coronoid, and then we went down and did the radial head plating. 15 months back, the patient had a radial head non-union, but that is okay. He had good functions. The radial head could be excised after 15 months, that's fine, because it has already served its purpose. Another fracture dislocation. This was a bad fracture. We did the CT was done, and here we went ahead and we decided that the radial head has to be removed. I'll show you the X-rays later. In the treatment plans, you have to always note that restore the elbow stability, protect the reconstruction, allow range of movement. Stability and protection should take precedence over the range of movements in a terrible triad. In a stable joint, one can get more motion. One may get less motion also in a stable joint, but that is okay. But in an unstable joint with good motion, you will never get stability. To remember this in cerebral cracks. That particular case, we did a radial head replacement and did a coronoid screws from the posterior side. This is an algorithm wherein you should always remember, after doing everything, if still you have instability, after suturing the lateral and medial collaterals, then an external fixator always has to be there on table, and that is the last option. Summarizing, cerebral crack is an osteoligamentous injury. Fracture pattern depicts a mode of injury. Stability has to be given prime importance. Elbow is a three-dimensional structure and a CT would be more important. Coronoid, if small, needs a fixation from the lateral side before the radial head fixation. Coronoid with anteromedial extension has to be dealt from the medial side. Posterior approach is okay, convenient for both the types. Radial head in a cerebral crack always has to be fixed and repaired. Ligament reconstruction is a must. Thank you.
I request to proceed for the lighting the lamp.
Memorial CME on fracture and peritroplantic fractures. We have roped in many experienced almost all over the country and abroad to share their expertise, which will and make CME more productive. Thank you.
He was born in simple agriculture family. Has earned a medical education through scholarships. He completed his high school of Hyderabad and pre-university course at Nizam College, Hyderabad, and Ferguson College of Obstetrics and Surgery. He joined the Army Medical Service in 1942 and served during the Second World War on the Western Front in India. He left the Army in 1946 and was selected as a candidate for the training in the UK as part of the post-war reconstruction program of the Nizam of Hyderabad. He completed MCH from the Liverpool in 1950 and his FRCS in 1951. He was an outstanding trainee at the Royal National Orthopedic Hospital, serving as SHO and registrar. He returned to India in 1959 1954. He was one of the 15th founder members of the Association of Surgeons of India to start the Indian Orthopedic Association on 30th December 1954. He worked as an orthopedic surgeon at Usmania General Hospital and was made professor of the orthopedics in 1956. He was the first in Hyderabad to perform the anterior spinal fusion for the tuberculosis of the spine. He conceived and planned to Nizam Orthopedic Hospital, a 50-bed hospital dedicated to the whole orthopedic surgery, personally supervising all aspects of its construction. He was appointed as a chief orthopedic surgeon and superintendent in 1965, served in his capacity until 1976. He was president of the Indian Orthopedic Association in 1976. He was appointed as honorary surgeon to Indian Armed Forces, a distinctive honor he held for many years. He was president of the AP chapter of IOA in 1973, president of IOA in 1976. He was founder chairman of the Twin Cities of the Orthopedic Association at Hyderabad. He was a senior fellow of BOA and emeritus fellow of SICOT. He maintained strict discipline and excellent patient care. He renowned for his sense of humor and for his playful teasing, and is remembered with an intense, affectionately, colleagues, patients, students alike. Retired in 1976 and continued active orthopedic practice until 1986, when he unfortunately developed paraplegia following spinal surgery at Bangalore by a visiting surgeon from Edinburgh. He died on 20th February 2002 after a sudden cardiac arrest. Thank you.
Association. I am honored to welcome you on behalf of the TOSA for this August gathering, that is Tosacon 2028 Nizamabad. At the outset, I must congratulate and appreciate Dr. Hariprasad Rao, Dr. Jayaprakash, Dr. Ramesh and the team for their untiring efforts to make this conference a grand success. And the theme of the CM today is intra-articular fractures and peri-articular fractures. You know, this treatment of these fractures is not that easy. It's a challenge for the orthopedic surgeon because they require a precise reduction and precise fixation, anatomical reduction and precise fixation to get an optimal function of the limb and the joint. And we have wanted distinguished speakers from our state, across the country and overseas. I hope we all get updated with our knowledge with this CME program. I thank you very much.
TOSA for giving us this opportunity to conduct this CME, Dr. Meteority Memorial CME. I thank all the faculty who have come here in spite of their busy schedule to give valuable lectures. I thank all the delegates for coming here. Thank you.
That's the main area, as we all know. Scaphoid, the main stabilizer. And it prevents the radial translation because it has a small, the radial styloid there, so that it can stop the translation while the wrist is ulnarly deviated. And it also serves as anchor for lots of ligaments, especially the radioscaphoid unit and the radioscaphocapitate ligaments. And it also helps in the insertion for the brachio radialis, which is the main deforming force. That is what we aim at when we're doing the fixation. You want to neutralize these forces. Now coming to the intermediate column, it includes the lunate fossa. We all heard of the die punch practice, isn't it? So this is a little bit of outdated verbiology we use, die punch. nowadays we use mainly the intermediate column. And you also have the sigmoid fossa there, where you have the ulna sitting there. Okay, and the volar lip gives attachment to the radiolunate ligaments. And the dorsal wall, you can see this gives attachment to the dorsal radiocarpal ligaments, and it extends about 3 millimeters more than the radial column. So that's the intermediate column. As I'm going in my talk, you can see the importance of this. The next important is the ulnar column. It encompasses the ulnar head and the TFCC. Again, the most important area, the TFCC, which maintains the distal radioulnar joint as well. So the radial column, intermediate, and the supporting radial metadiaphysis serve mainly for the load transmission from the carpus to the forearm. And these columns are used for further stabilization and planning for treatment. Now, distal radius fracture is not simple one, you just pull it and put it on a plate. There are lots of things nowadays you have to look for, because we have a CT scan wherein you can see the fragments and aim for the intra-articular stabilization with the least possible step, so that your patient doesn't develop post-traumatic arthritis. The aim is to give as much mobility as possible after the fixation. So the concept of intra-articular fragment specific classification was by Medoff and Pavlov in 1998, and it encompasses mainly the radial column, the dorsal wall, dorso-ulnar column, the volar rim, and the intra-articular fragments. The fragment specific fixation, we all can see these nice plates around there. So you can see these are used for the fragment specific fixation and the management of the complex intra-articular fractures. And this technique has been introduced to fix as much as possible. You want to stabilize, you don't just want to leave it, later on they'll be floating around causing arthritis. So we use pins, plates, and a combination of both. And what are the basic principles? Is the application of pins, wire forms, clamps, small contoured pin plates, and also low profile locking plates to the specific components, aiming at restoration of the distal radius geometry. The fixation implants are multiplanar, so you can plan for about 50 to 70 degrees, so you get good fixation. And the distal fragments fixation is based on the strong ipsilateral bone there, so that you aim to fix it with a cortical screw, and to that you aim for the small pins and the plates. And the most important thing, whenever you plan for surgery, make sure your hardware doesn't irritate the soft tissues. That's vital. Otherwise, you'll have to go in again, revise your fixation, or take it off again. And the main aim of these plates is to neutralize the deforming forces, both volar, dorsal, and as well as radial. And the fracture should be stable enough to aim at early range of movements. We all heard of AO basic principles, so that is what we're going to follow in that. And in some instances, whenever there is a lot of comminution, you might pull it to length, and sometimes you see a void. So you might have to plan for bone grafting, or sometimes the bone graft substitutes to fill the void. Otherwise, they'll be collapsed. In these scenarios, you might use X-fix for a temporary period, so that you get some superficial formation around. Most important, please do not do volar arthrotomy as much as possible. You end up with a lot of stiffness and instability. If at all, go dorsally with mini incision or arthroscopy. We can use the smaller arthroscopes to look at your reduction. So let us look at what are the implants we are going to use for this fragment specific. The pin plates, hook plates, wire forms and clamps, and the volar buttress plate. So what are these pin plates? These are 2 mm low profile plates, usually titanium, and which takes in about the smaller K wires, and on the proximal side the cortical screws. These are applied mainly on the radial side to stabilize the radial column, or sometimes on the intermediate column. And the next one is the hook plates. we all know the watershed line. So you don't want your volar plate to cross the watershed line. Otherwise, you'll end up with stiffness. So in those scenarios where you have really small fragments, you always wonder how do I fix it. So that's where you have these hook plates. As you can see, you can stabilize there, crossing the watershed line. Those pins go in there with a fixed angle hook, and you can stabilize that proximally with the screws. And you have these wire forms. Frankly, I never use this one, the wire forms. I've used the other ones. So I was also reading, like I said, I've also got enlightened doing this study. Okay, so you have these pre-bent wires that can be applied on all aspects, mainly the dorsal ulna and also the intraarticular fragments. And they are again fixed to the proximal with screws, and you have these hexagonal sockets that stabilizes the plate. And the most important that we all know is this beautiful one, isn't it? The volar buttress plate. So they come in different sizes. You could choose the 2.4 or 2.7 L or T plates and stabilize to work against the deforming forces. And what are the approaches used? We have varieties. It all depends on your fracture fragments. So I would suggest, if at all possible, if you have severely complicated fracture, do a CT scan first. Make a plan as to how you're going to approach, because at the end of the day, you don't want two approaches very close, causing again the soft tissue healing and also loss of the skin. Okay, so you can use whichever ways. There are different approaches, and let us see the sequence of this. I mean, we have Madoff, who is described the sequence. The initial step is to restore the radial column and the length and inclination first, followed by the intermediate. The most important is the cornerstone fixation, which is the volar lunate. Okay, you want to stabilize that, so it's like a foundation stone. And then based on that, you make your reduction and fixations and also reduce your dorsal combination. The radial column can be definitely fixed with a different type of plates. And there is some modification to this as well, where Reed, Madoff and Shen, you fix sometimes the intermediate fragment. If you think the bone fragments are good enough, try to fix the intermediate fragment, and then you stabilize your radial fragment onto that. So the ulnar column is finally checked to make sure. This is very, very common mistake. Like in proximal tibia where we miss the PCL. That is very commonly missed injury. Similarly, the DRUJ. So I would always want you to check the DRUJ instability. Simplest thing you could do is an above elbow plaster. Otherwise, you'll end up, however hard you try, the patient is not happy. So quick one, the complication you all know, the hardware failures, neurological complications, secondary osteoarthritis, EPL ruptures, pin migration, instability of the DRUJ, and the wrist stiffness. So you aim for early mobilization. Thank you all.
So I'll just briefly introduce you to DRUJ injuries and its management. So it starts with the anatomy. Distal radial joint is a distal link between the radius and ulna, and ulna is a fixed unit here, and radius pivots around the ulna, resulting in pronation and supination. There is significant amount of disparity in the anatomy, bony architecture. There is a difference in the radius of curvature of the radius and ulna. The radius is actually, the sigmoid notch is shallower than the ulna head. So this contributes to only 20% of the joint stability. The remaining 80% is formed by the soft tissues, that is called the TFCC, which again I will be describing in detail later. So whenever you are considering any pathology of the DRUJ, you have to consider the forearm axis as a whole. It has to include the proximal joint, the interosseous membrane, the DRUJ, the radiocarpal and the ulnocarpal joints. So all of these are interlinked. So they have got various morphological characteristics. In the coronal plane, you have a parallel oblique and reverse oblique configuration. Especially this is important because when you have a reverse oblique one, ulnar shortening osteotomy is avoided in these patients. And in the axial plane, that's sigmoid notch configuration, various shapes are there. Flat, ski, C and S. The flat and the ski slope are much shallower and are more prone for dorsal DRUJ instability. Coming to the ulnar head, it's an immobile, non-rotating, weight-bearing part of the forearm. It supports the load and about 50 to 130 degrees is covered with articular cartilage. The dome is the partial sphere and partial flat part of the ulnar head, which articulates with the ulnar disc. And that part of the bone which is devoid of cartilage is called the fovea, where the attachments of the all important radioulnar ligaments are there. Ulnar styloid is the dorsal extension of the subcutaneous border of ulna, where you have attachments of the superficial TFCC and the ECU. So coming to TFCC proper, it was described by Palmer and Werner. It spans and supports both the DRJ and the ulnocarpal joints. The most important component of TFCC is the radioulnar ligament, which is a primary stabilizer. It has got a superficial, deep, palmar and dorsal component. So this is a cadaveric dissection. You have a volar and a dorsal component, a superficial and deep. You can see the deep part going right into the fovea, the superficial part going to the tip of the styloid. This has got functional significance. Because if you see, there is a concept called iceberg concept. The visible part of the TFCC from the radiocarpal side is only the superficial part, and it is only a shock absorber. It has got no role in the stability. The deep part of the TFCC, there is a hidden part, is the primary DRJ stabilizer and the carpal stabilizer. So what happens? When that tether under surface is gone, the TFCC floats up and starts causing all sorts of problems. So the second part is the articular disc, which is the fibrocartilage, acts as shock absorber. If 80% of the force goes to the radial surface, 20% of it is absorbed in the articular disc. And when you do a shortening, it comes down to 4%. So the ulnar shortening actually decompresses the articular disc. It has got no role in stability of the DRJ. Extensor carpal sheath augments the dorsal capsule. Ulnocarpal ligaments, the precaudal, lunate and traptate, and meniscal homolog. All these 5 structures form the various parts of the TFCC. So other stabilizers, the dynamic stabilizers are the ECU tendon and the pronator quadratus. These two are the only dynamic stabilizers of this joint. Apart from these, other statics are the interosseous membrane and the DRJ capsule. So how will you proceed with management of these DRJ injuries? So I would categorize them into 5 points and I will move accordingly. When you have acute DRJ injury, which is synonymous with the TFCC injury, it has been classified by Palmer into 4 types. A is a central perforation, B is a ulnar side avulsion, which is commonly the one which causes problems. C is a distal avulsion of the carpus, and D is a radial side avulsion. So how does the patient present following this injury? Main complaint after a fall and outstretched hand is ulnar side wrist pain with or without clicks. And when you try to reciprocate the same mechanism, it starts developing pain at an exact point. That's called the press test. And you can exactly pinpoint the tenderness to the fovea, which is between the FCU and ECU. Other provocative test is a TFCC compression test, where you load the ulna by ulnar deviating it and go about with pronation and supination, which reproduces the pain. DRJ stability, though, cannot be seen in the acute stage, but over 3 weeks you can definitely find out ballotment if it is unstable joint. And piano key sign, where the ulna pops out in and out, more seen in chronic injuries. So how do you proceed with treatment of these acute TFCC injuries? The principal determining factor is the joint stable? If it is a stable joint, it's straightforward. Put him in above elbow splint for 4 to 6 weeks and reassess whether it has healed or deep. The problem is only if the deep part of the TFCC doesn't heal properly. And if it's unstable right at the time of presentation, then it's at the 1B tear, which is a foveal avulsion, very unlikely to heal. You can proceed with an MRI and go with the arthroscopic or open TFCC repair according to the convenience of the surgeon. So, depending on the tear, again, when you do an arthroscopy, when you have a 1A tear, which is a central tear, you just proceed with the debridement of the TFCC, and if there is no ulnar variance, that is the end. If it is a positive ulnar variance, you may need an additional procedure like a distal wafer resection or ulnar shortening osteotomy to decompress this degenerated part of the articular disc. So that's a tear which routinely is shaved off with an arthroscopic shaver, and you can do a wafer resection with the burr at the same time, or you can do a ulnar shortening like on the extreme left side. Right. What do you do with the 1B tear? When you put a scope inside, you can see a trampoline sign where the articular disc pops in and out, it's lost its tensile strength, and you can actually hook the disc up. You can just put a hook and pull it up, that's a hook sign. So when you have these 2 signs, you have to repair it. The commonly done repair techniques are the outside in and inside out techniques. These address only the peripheral part, the central foveal part is not addressed in this. So you need a foveal fixation in all the 1B tears. So the usual technique is the transosseous tunnels, arthroscopic, and put a PDS suture and just pull it back to the fovea and attach it there. If not possible, you can definitely do an open repair, open right across the fovea, debride the foveal insertion and just put a suture anchor and reattach the radioulnar ligaments right onto the fovea. 1C is again a tear, like it's any other tear. 1D you can reattach it or debride it depending on its stable or unstable. So what do you do with the DRUJ injury when associated with distal radius fractures? It's seen in 80% of patients, and the risk factors at the time of presentation are if you have a wide displacement of the DRUJ, or if there is severe radial shortening of more than 5 mm, then it indicates that DFCC is gone. And when you're fixing this, you have to be sure that there is no radial or sagittal translation of the distal fragment, because that doesn't allow the DFCC to flee back to its anatomical position. So any shortening of more than 5, inclination of less than 12, and dorsal angle of more than 20 not acceptable in extra-articular distal radius fractures, which doesn't allow you to fix your DFCC. Coming to intra-articular fractures, like always, more than 2 mm is prone for arthritis, but the amazing thing is, even in spite of the steps, most of the patients are asymptomatic. So how much of this ultimately results in functional deterioration actually is questionable. When you have a distal radius fracture with ulnar solid, you have to fix it and just wait it. So anatomical reduction is that one which is in our hands, and we just wait for the best to happen. And while fixing, you have to give specific focus for the volar ulnar corner and the dorsal ulnar corner, where exactly your dorsal and the volar radioulnar ligaments originate from. So anatomic reduction is must, and whatever you do on top of that is favorable. So how do you proceed? Anatomical reduction is must, and if it is unstable on in a certain position, then you can proceed with a long arm cast or a radioulnar pinning in supine position, which usually is a stable position. If it is grossly unstable in spite of anatomical distal radius fixation in all planes, then proceed with the open arthroscopic DFCC repair. How do you proceed with a Galeazzi fracture dislocation? So we routinely see that as we move away from the radiocarpal joint, the incidence of instability is much less. So if it is reduced and stable after fixing the radius, leave it. Immobilize for 2 weeks and leave it. If it is reduced and unstable without a fracture, then pin it or cast in supine for 4 to 6 weeks. With ulnar solid fracture, fix the styloid and immobilize it. Sometimes we do find that the DRUJ is irreducible due to incarceration, where we might need to an open reduction, and in that case we do an open DFCC repair. When isolated ulnar styloid fractures are present with instability. So ulnar styloid fractures are classified into 3 types depending on the zone. Zone 1 is a tip fracture, 2 is a basal fracture, and 3 is part of the head is involved. So 2 is the one which is the cause of dilemma in most of us. It has a radioulnar ligament insertion onto it. So a type 2 fracture has to be fixed, especially when it's a young patient, highly active patient, and heavy labels and other patients with high demands. So various methods of fixing this ulnar styloid for KYs, tension bands, screws, anchors, plates, whatever it is, it has to be anatomically reduced. Coming to chronically neglected DRUJ instability, it is especially seen with chronic DFCC injuries, malunited distal radius fractures, Essex locust in Maitland's deformity. Symptoms with palpable clamp, weakness, reduced grip strength, loss of rotation, allotment posture, press, chest posture, and piano keys and posture. So aim is to provide a stable, painless, full arc range of movement. Bony correction is a must, and you have to rule out arthritis before doing your DRUJ reconstruction. And the most common method used is the Adams procedure, or is the reconstruction of the distal radioulnar joint with a strip of palmaris longus. So across the sigmoid notch you have a tunnel, and across the fovea you have a tunnel, and you wind the palmaris longus across this. So that's how the procedure is done. You have a tunnel in the across the sigmoid notch. A palmaris longus tendon is weaved through it into the fovea, and you get a quite good movement. And more important than that is a significant improved grip strength, which you see in these patients with this procedure. This procedure can be done arthroscopically assisted as well, where you just put a guide wire across the fovea, drill with a cannulator, drill with faster grafts or arthroscopy. The advantage here is your secondary stabilizers are still intact. And if you have a shallow configuration of the sigmoid notch, you may need a sigmoid notch osteoplasty to increase the articular congruity. And in neglected injuries with intra-articular involvement, you may need a salvage procedures like the Bowers rib section and inclusion arthroplasty, the escape procedure, which is common in young active patients, and the modified thorax. Actually, the original thorax has significant complications like radioulnar impaction. So you have to stabilize the ulnar stem with a strip of ECU or FC, which is called a modified thorax technique. Which gives a good result, but it is reserved for elderly patients. And ulnar head arthroplasty is for the sake of competition, not for degree. Thank you very much.
Okay, persons, I'm going to talk to you about opening the hand. The 5 most important cardinal principles that we need to follow in all open injuries are debridement. I'll dilate on all of these 5 points. Debridement, skeletal stabilization primarily, primary repair of tendons, nerves and vessels if need be, skin cover and rehabilitation. If you miss any of these 5, you are going to end up in a big problem. So what is debridement? The debridement is converting a contaminated open vein into a surgically clean wound. You have to thoroughly wash it with a lot of saline and not put in hydrogen peroxide there. It requires sometimes hours and hours of cleaning to convert a contaminated wound into a surgically clean wound. It requires effective anesthesia and not vocal anesthesia. You have to have a good tourniquet so that you have a bloodless field there. And you have to use finer instruments to do all these things here. Skeletal stabilization, whether you do a K-wiring or you use spades or external fixator, the bottom line is choose one which will give you minimum stiffness. Primary repair of tendons, nerves and vessels is extremely important. If you are going to do it next day, it never comes. Do it primarily on day one. The skin cover. Do a primary closure. Primary closure does not mean use strangulating suture. If you can't close it with 4050 nylon, don't use strangulating suture. You are going to kill more. If you can't close it, use skin graft. If you have white structures, I'll again come to that, use a flap primarily. What are the white structures? If the bones are exposed, put a flap. If the nerves are exposed, put a flap. If vessels are exposed, flap. If the tendon without parateron is there, put a flap. Do not wait for granulation tissue, because granulation tissue healing is healing by secondary intention. And then the most important, you have done everything and you do not rehabilitate properly, you are going to end up in a stiff hand. So you require n number of sprints to mobilize the joints and get a good optimum function. So let's take some clinical examples here. We have this girl who had an injury to her fingertip here, and what you see here, exposure of the distal phalanx, insertion of the flexor distal profound is exposed and skin is lost here. So what do you do here? So you have a part of the bone which is exposed and soft tissue exposed here. So where the soft tissue was exposed, where the white structures were not exposed, and put a full thickness skin graft here, obtained from the groin area. Where the bone was exposed, where the insertion of the FBP is there, this was covered with a flap. And the flap I obtained here was a thinner flap here to create the contour of the finger here. So what did I get in the end? I get a full coverage here, primarily no infection. This is where the full thickness skin graft was done, where the thinner flap was done. And what about the donor area? The donor area has gone on the good healing, and you can hardly see the donor defect. And this is the flexion extension you get. This is where we began, and this is where we ended here. Second injury here is a fracture dislocation of the PIP joint here. There is a comminuted fracture of the adjacent finger. These are both open injuries. There is an injury to the extensor tendon as well here. What do you do here? Debridement, first phase. Second thing is skeletal stabilization. There are various options available here. But if you put external fixator there, I have my reasons to feel this is going to lead to a stiff finger, because we need to do an early mobilization of this finger after getting the bones into alignment. So I put multiple K wires here so that the articular surface can be restored here. I am still not putting a external fixator here and immobilizing the joint here. Here the length was restored, extensor tendon was injured, and therefore I fixed this joint to support the extensor tendon here. And the lateral of the same finger here, the joint's line has been restored here. What happens here? What happens to the PIP joint? Sure enough, I get a good PIP joint range of motion because I did not pin the cave of PIP joint here. Another injury, it's not uncommon to see stapling of these primary wounds. The stapling is the bad thing that I see every time here. The moment you staple these things, you strangulate the skin and the whole skin dies here. So with staples, can you appreciate the color here? And there is hardly any color here. And remove the staple and few hours later, you can see the fully filling up of the blood. And therefore avoid stapling in the fingers here, because that crucifies and kills the tissue here. We did a stability here, with K-wiring here, and then the range of motion we got after healing. Another injury here. Skin loss does not mean you amputate the part. Skin loss means you supplement these injuries with skin loss here, and you raise a flap to the adjacent finger here. This is giving us blood supply and nerve supply from one of the arteries of the radial. It is called the first dorsal metacarpal artery flap. This is tunneled in the web space and enveloping the developed part of the distal phalanx here. This is the defect which was covered with a full thickness skin graft, and this is after healing. This is after fixation of the Abel section of the tendon here, and this is after full healing and full restoration of digestion. And of course the sensation recovered because this is getting innervated by the branches of the radial nerve here. So this is where it began and this is the end. Another injury here, last injury here is last year of the 2 digits and the web space here. You have the fracture of the first metacarpal fracture, the second metacarpal intraarticular fracture, the base of the proximal phalanx. Debridement is followed by skeletal stabilization using KORs and then the groin flap. The groin flap was provided here and sure enough went on to good primary healing node. And this is where we started 17 years post surgery, and this is where the end is. Good web space, good surface, good opposition here. It's not uncommon to see these kind of injuries. Again, the important thing is debridement. If you don't debride it properly and there is an infection there, that's the beginning of the end. If you're spending hours and hours of cleaning, it is extremely crucial to have a good foundation and conversion of the contaminated wound into a clean wound. Do not rely on antibiotic. Antibiotic is not going to serve the purpose if you have not done a good debridement. And this is open injury of the distal radius, closed injury of the ulna. And this took 6 hours of cleaning, 6 hours of cleaning, and still I was not sure. Next morning again I brought this patient, again cleaned further, then supplemented with K-wires here. Next to fixator was supporting. So this is where we started. This is after debridement, but as I said, the third thing is skin cover. Covered with the groin flap here. Negotiate the flap under the external fixator here so that the patient can move in early range of motion. And this is the kind of motion we got in the end. Again, primary healing and no infection. Another open injury here, debrided, flap, and sure enough, this is the range of motion we got of this patient also. Primary healing and no infection. On the punched out hand, the patient was wearing a glove, he brought all the punched out part, the metacarpophalangeal joint, the tendons and nerves, everything he brought. We debrided in the middle of the night everything, we put back everything here, put KYs, put this thing back, and supplemented with flaps here. We had a flap on the polar aspect, we had a flap on the dorsal aspect, and what was the range of motion? This is the kind of function we got of this patient. Another injury here, aim is functional restoration. The functional restoration is getting a thumb back, and they were debrided, put a groin flap here, and polysize it after the wound had healed, after transferring the index finger to restore the function here. Another injury here. Again, do not ankle because this appears to be crushed. See what can possibly be salvaged, how to restore the function of this thing here. Stabilize the skeleton here, and this he can hold large objects and small objects after putting a groin flap in this area. Just do not jump to the conclusion this requires amputating. Put a small flap here also so that we can maintain the length of this finger because 2 other fingers are already gone. This was a girl who sustained an epileptic fit while she was having bath and had remained immersed in the boiling water for almost half an hour before she could be saved. We put a huge groin flap here and we put a huge abdominal flap on her hand and we got some coverage here. Then we lengthened the metacarpal, then we lengthened the digits using screws here, and sure enough, she can ride a bicycle here, and sure enough, we have a web space here, and this is where we began, this is where we ended. Another injury here, revascularize. We put a shunt here to revascularize the distal part and put a great circumference vein here. We anticipated compartment syndrome, which did set in within a few minutes. You did a fasciotomy here, skin grafting, the range of motion here. Another patient here, open injury here, first brachial artery here. We put a debridement, put another vein here, put a latissimus dorsal flap here. And this is the range of motion we got of this patient here. Another injury here. Everything was cut here, except these 3 structures. Do not give debridement to your junior most person because this was the radial nerve, medial nerve, and ulnar nerve, and only the brachialis muscle was intact. There was the fracture of the humerus here. Brachial artery and nerves were all cut here. We put vein graft and everything after skeletal stabilization. Everything was repaired here. A word of caution here. Do not put external fixator everywhere. This causes significant harm and prevents you from doing a lot of surgery here. So avoid this surgery. So in summary, 5 principles need to be followed in all open injuries here. Debridement has to be very thorough. Do not rely on antibiotics. First thing is wash it. Whatever is dead has to be removed. followed by skeletal stabilization, primary repair and cover, rehab. To do all these things, we would like to restore the hand to an optimum range of motion and function. I thank you very much for patient listening. Thank you.
So probably one of the most common problem of late with a lot of researchers. So I have two things in this. I'm going to talk to you briefly about the non-union of scaphoid, the classification and treatment. And 15 minutes later down the lane, I have a video showing the treatment of the non-union scaphoid. So that probably should completely give a 360-degree understanding of non-union scaphoid management. Non-union scaphoid is the most common one to get fractured in the carpal bones. Almost 80% of the carpal fractures are scaphoid fractures. When do we call it as non-union? So after 6 months, if there is loss of relocation across the fracture line, or sclerosis of the margins, or increased opacification of one fracture in the proximal or distal, usually proximal because of the avascularity, we diagnose it as non-union. So you are sure that it is not going to unite unless some intervention is required. If we take the incidence of non-union, the proximal bone, which is most likely to be non-union, almost 30%. About 10% is the raised fractures, and tuberous fractures rarely going for non-union, very rarely about 5%. So the most of the time it is the proximal bone non-union, which is the most difficult to treat also. So in my subsequent video, I'm going to show how to treat a non-union of the proximal scaphoid. I'm not going to go to the details, probably everybody knows the fast proximal non-union most often is because of the retrograde blood supply which happens in the scaphoid. So few of the patients who don't have enough antegrade blood supply, this retrograde blood supply gets cut off when you have a fracture at the waist or proximal bone, and one hole or one fragment becomes avascular, leading to non-union. What we need to understand is that the relevant anatomy is important before you plan to manage this. Now, first thing is an S-shaped bone and is retrograde flow. 80% of the scaphoid is articular. So whatever fixation you do, it has to be buried, and whatever grafting you do to get a union, it has to be an inlay graft. Unlike other non-unions, you can't put graft over the bone and try to get it union because scaphoid is mostly intra-articular and 80% scar. So the principle is the graft has to be an inlay and fixation has to be buried. Second, scaphoid is at 45 degrees angle to both the planes. So the relevance of it I'll tell you subsequently. Third is its mechanical link to proximal and distal. So a non-union of scaphoid is going to cause arthritis both proximally in the radiocarpal joint and distally in the intercarpal joints because it articulates with 5 ribs. That is radius, medial, cartilage. So this is the reason why non-union scaphoid needs to be treated a little more aggressively. So this is what I was telling, 80% is articular, so your bone grafting has to be an inlay grafting. And as told you, the scaphoid is 45 degrees angle to both the planes. So whenever you have a non-union of scaphoid, the scaphoid tends to buckle and then it tends to collapse. So you get a humpback deformity, that is the scaphoid collapses on the volar side. So we need to correct this deformity in long-standing non-unions. A non-union scaphoid less than 2 years usually does not develop much humpback deformity. But a non-union beyond 2 years, you need to correct the deformity. Otherwise, radiocarpal arthritis is bound to occur over a period of time. And the only way you can know whether there is a humpback deformity or not is only by taking good CT scan. Now, as I told you, it articulates a lot of things, so a non-union will actually be used. The biggest question is, what are the principles of treatment? The principles of treatment, like any other non-union, remain the same. Open the non-union, later this non-union surface. The approach, you can go dorsal or volar, remove the virus tissues, correct the deformity, there's a deformity. Bone graft, inlay or vascularized depending on the state. Fixation occurs through a Raybo's screw, and if there is a radiocarpal arthritis, there is a salvage procedure. To diagnose a non-union, conventional X-ray is probably the best because it gives us two objectives. It not only gives us the non-union, it also gives us the status of radiocarpal arthritis and intercarpal arthritis. Because the treatment of a long-standing non-union is not only dependent on non-union, it is also dependent on the intercarpal and radiocarpal arthritis, which is best seen in a plain X-ray and not in an MRI. But in all cases of non-union, we need to get a CT scan which will show us whether there is a humpback deformity there or not, so that we need to get a correction. And we also need to get an MRI in all non-union scaphoids to see whether there is elasticity. So I would say non-union scaphoid is one fracture where you need an X-ray, CT and an MRI. I would prefer to get all the three. It's not that you get satisfied, because your whole treatment plan is dependent on the tree. Whether arthritis is there or not, comeback deformity is there or not, neovascular. Whole treatment is dependent on these three aspects. So it's must to get in a non-union, convince the patient to get a CT and also an MRI. Now, why should we treat non-union? The natural course of non-union. Usually the non-union, what happens? A lot of controversies on that. There are 6 or 8 carpal bones, you have a 9th carpal bones. But that doesn't stand valid. So there are enough studies to say that almost 80% of them over a period of 10 to 12 years are definitely going to develop radiopharmaceutical carpal arthritis. So we need to treat these non-unions as and when they are diagnosed. Now there is a little controversy on this thing, saying that the patient, the 65 or 70-year-old patient with a non-union point, who will still need them. Then the choice needs to be left to the patient. By the time he develops arthritis at 70 or 80, probably it doesn't matter to treat those patients. But young patients with non-union arthritis, most of them will be silent. When a second injury occurs, this non-union becomes symptomatic. So better to operate on younger patients when you have a non-union, though the course of non-union leading to arthritis is still present. Part of the factors which create success in non-union, trying elastic surgery, the earlier the better. Vascularity of the proximal fragment, because the procedure changes depending on the vascularity, deformity, and the presence of periscopitis. So, in other words, you say non-unions between 6 months to 2 years have a much better prognosis than, I don't say 2 years as a clear cutoff point, but if beyond 2 years, then you need to be guarded about the final outcome in these cases. So, treatment is the basic instruments which we require for a non-union scaphoid. You need a cannulated screwdriver, you need guide wire, you need 2 differential tabs, and you need hardware. So these days, hardware are frequently used, freely available, and the company themselves do the instrumentation also. So before we go to arthritis, probably there are a lot of classifications available. This is the best classification which I found in terms of treatment. Fibrous non-union, pseudoarthrosis, sclerotic pseudoarthrosis, and neovascular. This is what we treat. Actually, so fibrous non-union is a non-union stable. There is no deformity or collapse in the vascularity. So these types of non-union, what they require is a rigid fixation, probably a little cancer bone graft listed in a radius. That's all what is required. This is the case, 8 months non-union is required. Stable, no collapse, simple Herbert screw graft, just heals in about 3 months. So these type of non-unions don't require it. Of late, missed scaphoids, when we see at 6 months, they are usually in this category. Probably immediate fixation is the best answer for them. Now we have unstable non-unions where there is non-union mobile angulated margins are cleared, they may be deformed. In these cases, you need to not only correct the deformity and put an inlay graft in addition to fixation. So these unstable non-unions, especially of the raised, the best prefer our approach is only the OLAR approach. Dorsally, you can't go and try to count deformity. So you need to go OLAR, open up the fracture site, put a small inlay graft on the distal radius or radius crest, and put it up as there. Most difficult one is avascular pseudoarthrosis, where one fragment is avascular. So these requires same open reduction, internal fixation, plus a vascular bone graft. And where you get the vascular bone graft, there are first and second metacarpal arteries, or compartmental arteries, or third and fourth compartmental arteries. I prefer fourth compartmental arteries. In the subsequent video, what I am going to show, I show how I do a vascularized bone graft for non-union with a vascularity of proximal foot. This is a simple example. I just show you run through. Now this is what the vessels on which those are the metacarpal. I prefer the fourth metacarpal compartmental arteries. Based on that, we take a bone graft, small bone graft, and run it into and just put it, make it rough it and inlay at that non-union site. So this is mainly reserved for avascular non-unions. This is what I stated from here, and then that's where it is. When this non-unions come a little late, say beyond 2 years, where there is already radiocarpal or intercarpal arthritis, so then we have to only have an option of salvage procedures. So non-union scaphoid leads to arthritis. If there is a stage 1 where there is only radioscaphoid arthritis, the treatment of choice is just the radial styloidectomy. You can buy another 2 years. If there is a progression involving the whole proximal row carpal, nuclear proximal row carpal, or sometimes a simple scaphoid excision. But if the whole intercarpal arthritis is there, then you do a fourth common function, that is use capitate lunate scaphoid trapezium. But the whole arthritis is there, which is very rarely I have seen. Then the only option you have is proximal lobe carpectomy or go for a breast arthrodesis. Thank you.
This will cover why the illuminate dislocation occurs and how it happens, how to diagnose it, what is the role of conservative management and surgery, and what if the patient is presented late. The mechanism of injury. It's important to know it's a high velocity injury here. What that means, it's either from a fall of a high-speed motorcycle, fall from height, or contact level contact sports. Bottom line is it's a violent fall. Because of a violent fall, we need to keep a few things in mind. I'll come to that in a little while. The next thing is a mechanical injury, is a hyperextension injury. Why we need to know this also? What happens in the process of hyperextension injury here? As the wrist hyperextends, this is capitate, this is unit. The capitate tends to fall out of the alignment with the unit. So the unit is held in place with the radius, as Dr. Sunil was mentioning, because of a very strong ligaments of the molar aspect, radio unit ligaments. These ligaments keep in check the unit in place, and the capitate continues to migrate dorsally here and continues to extend. And as the capitate extends, the unit falls out of socket here, and unit can ricochet back into place and get alignment with the radius. And this is what happens in the injury process here. There are two ligaments. Just to enumerate here, 1, 2, 3. Just forget about the names here. The important thing to know is the star. There is a weak spot between these two ligaments from where the unit can pop out. It is important to know because we have to pop in the unit back to this space here. As like the extrinsic ligament, there are intrinsic ligament between the scaphoid unit and between the unit and triquetrum. Mayfield has given a good classification. Why we need to know this here? Because in the process of this hyperextension injury, which the injury starts on the radial side and sequentially the ligaments fail, and as predictable route through which this ligament resistance fails sequentially. What that basically means is, sequentially would mean first there is a break of the ligament between the scaphoid and unit, unit ligament. Next, there is a break of the ligament between the unit and the capitate, that's the second level. And as I said, sequentially, it starts from here, goes here, and it comes on the other side. Then there is a break of the ligament between the unit and the triquetrum, and then finally the unit pops out, and that completes the spectrum of injuries that follows. Now, when the injury is to the blue line, only breaking the ligaments around the unit, it's called a lesser arc injury. But instead of going between the ligament here, there is a break of the scaphoid here, it's called as a greater arc injury. 2/3 of the cases will have a greater arc injury, but 1/3 will get the lesser arc injury. There are various variants, I'm not going to that here. How the patient will present? First thing, remember, it's a high velocity injury here, and therefore patient will have other injuries. He may have head injury, he may have cervical collar injury, cervical spine injury, and therefore or other open injuries on the other part of the body. Because of these other injuries which are very obvious, patient may miss these injuries and patient will not complain at all. At all he does. The wrist is swollen, it is deformed, it is painful with a restricted range of motion here. There would be other injuries, as I said, to other parts of the body. What all you need to do is get a plain X-ray, PK and lateral view, and what you see. Do you require any other added imaging studies? You don't require CT or MRI to confirm the diagnosis here. And what you see are the lines here. The proximal border of the proximal carpal root, the distal border of the proximal carpal root, or the proximal border of the distal carpal root. These lines are smooth. These are called Gilloir's lines here. In an injury pattern, you might see that these lines are ruptured here, interrupted here. Or unlike this plain X-ray which is normal here, where the bones are uniform, there is a good space between each of the bones, there is a good space, there is a good space here, there is a good space here, there is a good space here. They are all jumbled up, they are all crowded. This is called as crowded carpal sign. This is an indicator the patient has a unit injury here. Or you will see that intercarpal joint is not obvious. is overlapping with the lunate and adjacent bones here. And further, we will see that scaphoid, instead of lying obliquely here and seeing the whole length of the radius, the whole length of the scaphoid, it is pointing end on, ring sign here. Or you may see further, you will see the lunate which is pointing vertically up, which is oblique, which is 90 degree and 180 degree rotated. They are all spectrum of lunate injuries that you will see in these perilunate dislocation spectrum here. On the lateral view, you see what is spilled cup here. You see this cup is spilled. There is a lunate popping out, pointing in the upward direction here. So instead of lunate being in line in the capitate, it is lying outside. So these are all things that you will see just on a good plain X-ray here. Further, the lunate in a normal case here is trapezoidal in shape, but here it has become triangular in shape. This is called a piece of pie sign here. It is triangular in shape here. This is a piece of pie sign here. So the management will depend on what is injured. If the ligaments are injured, you repair the ligament. If the bone is injured, you fix the bone as well. What about management? Conservative management minimum. It's the surgery which is almost always required in these cases here. How do you do a close reduction here? You give a traction of about 3 to 5 kg for a few minutes here and extend it and push the lunate back into alignment while pushing the capitate distally here. And most likely you will be able to do it acutely here if possible. Acutely if possible. Approach may be dorsal, it may be roller, or a combination of approaches. I often do it with dorsal approach, but if the median nerve is involved, you require a roller approach. Or if you are not able to do it, don't fight with the tissue, you can do more damage. Do a combined approach here. Surgery is most of the time required, as I said, with a dorsal approach, you can do the second and third compartment, or through extended carpal tunnel incision on the molar aspect here. On the molar aspect, you will see the popped out medial, unit, which is tenting the ulnar nerve here. You have to push this back to that rent between the molar ligaments, which were discussed earlier here. What about conservative management? The results are poor because it's only 25% of time that the close reduction is retained. In 70%, 5% time, it will fall back into original disfigured situation here. It's very important to have an accurate reduction, and this is only possible with the open reduction here. You may do a close reduction if the patient is an anticoagulant, patient is not really for monument situation, or other situations, other bodily injuries which prevent taking the patient to the operating room here. But after close reduction, which has been dilated on earlier, if there is still a widening of the scaphoid unit area, you may consider as soon as is possible an open reduction here. Just take a few clinical examples. This is a lesser arc injury here. The bone, the lunate is overlapping with the triangular lunate here, and the greater arc injury where there is a fracture of the scaphoid also. You create this star-shaped alignment here of two wires going from the proximal distal end of the scaphoid into the capitated unit, and from the tricuspid into the capitated unit here, and stabilize and see that you can restore the articular alignment here. But this is all done open because you have to, in addition, do a repair of the ligaments here. You may not be able to do primary repair of the ligaments, and therefore you have to put in multiple anchors dorsally here so that you can align your ligaments here. This was another patient with a greater arc injury here. You put a screw into the scaphoid, add some bone graft if possible because it is safer and easier to put a bone graft rather than have a revision surgery here. What are the advantages of open reduction? You can remove loose contour pieces there. You can have you can do a ligamentous repair, and you can visualize carpal alignment being restored here. How long? For about 8 to 10 weeks you have to immobilize it here. Yes, you will get arthritis in most of these patients here. In almost more than 50%, you will get arthritis here. But there are situations where the patient will present late here. In those situations, you stress and then do a secondary open reduction. So this was a patient who presented late with transcatheter perilunate dislocation, but put the external fixator to stretch the mid-carpal joint and then got an alignment back here. But you do see the smoothness is gone here, arthritis is sitting in there. One thing is painless here. There is another patient presenting late here, non-unit of proximal pole here. This was an injury in 2017, presented in September. When the open door molar aspect, you will appreciate the cartilage is damaged, illuminate here, molar aspect here. So we need a proximal procarpectomy in this situation here. What about long-term results of this teleurethritis? Yes, they do get a radiological arthritis, but they do tolerate this pretty well. And a very interesting paper came in 2016. They compared open reduction versus proximal procarpectomy. And what they concluded, even if you do a proximal procarpectomy, they get as good results with open reduction. Therefore, do consider PRC in these situations here. In summary, remember the smoothness of the bones, alignment of the bones, gillulas, protect the nerve. Open reduction is preferred over conservative management, and late presentation due to a stage study or proximal procarpectomy. And thank you very much for patiently listening once again. Thank you.
Had an injury to the wrist 2 years back, I mean, can explain, did not find anything, then he was left alone like that. And then his patient was okay for 2 years, then he had a repeat fall, and then that's when he started getting pain in because the X-ray shows that there is a non-union of the scaphoid, there's a lytic area in this thing. And then we got a CT scan done and an MRI. MRI showed the proximal bone. Unfortunately, the patient lost the CT scan and MRI in the train when he was coming for surgery. So I couldn't get I don't have the MRI, but there was an elastic of the proximal bone. So exactly when you have a close-up view, you can see that there is a sclerosis of the margin and then there is a lining. For this, we have taken up the plan was to open the fracture site, clear out the fracture site, put a Herbert screw, back the cavity, transfer graft from distal radius, and do a vascularized pedicle graft from the distal end of radius based on 4 compartment artery. That was my plan. So this is how I do it. So usually, before I take up the thing, I first see that I get a good view of my scaphoid. So I arrange my table in Siam so that in between you don't need to keep on wasting time. So you try to put the artery forceps and try to locate the non-union side. So once you are sure it, you take an incision going from the lower 2 inches above the wrist to the point in the distal. And you do a gradual dissection of the skin. Try to preserve as many veins as possible on the dorsum. It only helps us in getting reduced in the sticks. Once the skin and surface is dissected, again you identify the area and your Siam where it is there. Then you incise the retinaculum of ECR and ECRB into the second compartment, and then retract the ECRL one side and ECR to one side. Then incise the capsule over there. And once you incise the capsule, as you can see here, there will be enough of thickening of the capsule, and then you can see usually you don't find such thickened aluminum because it's long standing. So you need to do that. Once you incise the capsule, then the scaphoid will be exposed at the scaphoid which is seen there, and then this little thickened aluminum again you try to excise inside that thing, and there that's where the scaphoid is. Once you have identified the scaphoid, you take a simple wire because the cartilage will be still, unlike other non-union, the scaphoid looks complete. So only the cartilage will continue to be there, the inner bone continue to not be there. So you take a K-wire and just identify the non-union site. So just go and try to do non-union site. And once you put the K-wire, the cartilage dips in. So remove a little of the cartilage. And once the cartilage is done, then you put your curate and then confirm whether the curate is corresponding to the non-union site or not. On the X-ray, so now I'm sure the non-union site. Then you thoroughly curate out the cavity, remove whatever the fibrous tissue that is there. So you need 5, 2 mm, 3 mm curates, and that's how you do the complete curettage of the cavity. And once you do the curettage of the cavity also become a little bigger, what I would say 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters, so that my graft can go and sit in the cavity apart from the cavity. So that's the thorough curettage of the cavity is done, and then once the cavity is thoroughly penetrated, again you confirm on your CR, you can see now the cavity is one from the medial side, so there's thick. Then the entry point, I usually use I don't use directly guide wires for scaphoid because the guide wires for scaphoid are really malleable. So it's very difficult to exactly guide them where you want. So I use a 1.5 mm K wire because it serves the purpose and I am using it as a drill also. So I use 1.5 which is more rigid. So the entry point is taken at the proximal core of the scaphoid. You make an entry point and again confirm in the CR if the entry point is correct or not. Then you advance the K wire beyond the fracture site, again confirm whether its trajectory is correct or not. And once you are sure, I would usually push the cable and go beyond the scaphoid a little so that it gets a fixation. So I am completely pushing the scaphoid, and once this is done, and I usually use a T-handle, I don't use a drill to pass the scaphoid. And you confirm the cable in all positions, in all mistakes. Now I cut the cable and leave it with the stabilizer. Thus now I am going to open the fourth compartment for my arm. So that is the fourth compartment you can see there. These are the extensor tendons over there. Those are the extensor tendons over there. Inside the extensor tendon. Once you inside the extensor tendon, retract the extensor tendon towards the ulnar side. Then you can see the vessels there in the skin. You can see the vessels there, one vessel, one vessel. So this is the second compartment artery, and this is the fourth compartment artery which is there. As you can see the line diagram, this corresponds to this. So I am going to use this artery, which I dissected subsequently and shows the artery here, a piece of bone radius from here, with this pedicle as a reverse flow. That's the artery, you can see now it's coming over here. Now that's the artery. And a little further dissection. I'm not going to use other artery now. This artery is also the anastomose here. So I'm going to take this artery which is there in this, and then cut this artery here. So that's the artery which I'm going to place my bone graft on. So once I've identified the artery, I need to take a cuff of tissues around the artery so that it doesn't get detached. So I like to take the cuff along with the periosteum. So it's safer because periosteum is stuffed, so it resists the stretch and the vessel doesn't get damaged. I elevate the periosteum of the pedicle before I actually go and drill this thing. Now my distal part of the artery is clamped and we cut that here. Now I make drilling holes with radius before I do an osteotomy. It's easier to drill hole and cut the bone rather than trying to cut it with this thing. So once the drill holes are all around, periosteum is incised. Now I take a fine osteotome, 3 mm or 4 mm osteotome, and just I want the slival of the bone along with a little underlying cancellous bone. So we don't want to keep it through and through. So this is the osteotomy what we are doing. And once the osteotomy is done, with the osteotome itself, we just gently try to, because the bone is still contact here, I am not cut it here. So I have to be very gently elevating, otherwise the vascular pedicle gets detached from this bone and this whole process is lost. So as you can see, slowly when the pedicle becomes soft now, suddenly pop it comes out. So now that's, the bone is separated, but still some periosteal attachment will be there underneath that thing. So we try to separate it. Now I take a knife and cut out the periosteum from the underneath that, after a little separation from the osteotome. Now that we are there, and then now this is the periosteum. With the periosteum, we elevate the whole pedicle till the level of the wrist. And at the level of the wrist, it is a little half shoulder. Now I elevate it from this same window, I take out cancellous bone, which I will make it back in the cavity. Because this is going to be an onlay. In the cavity, we make this like little cancellous bone, that's what we get to. Now the pedicle is carefully dissected at the level of the wrist. So you have to be careful so that this pedicle doesn't get detached from the bone back. So because this is carrying the vessel with this thing, and when I'm not able to do that, I take a knife and make a clean dissection. Don't try to slide and get slip or anything. Once this is done, I determine the size. Usually you can use a guide wire and determine. I usually take a rough estimate. Usually 22 mm is what an Indian scaphoid requires. The guide wire is replaced with the guide wire. I remove the K wire, I have it track, I put it as square, and I pass my screw over the guide wire. I pass the screw till the head comes to the cortex, and I don't give a compression. I stop short at that level. Then I open the, and then confirm it in my CR in all the views. Then I will go to the fracture site and back the fracture site with the cancellous graft what I have got it there. All the cancellous graft will be back there and the fracture site, as you can see the cancellous graft is like this, another graft which I will pack it completely at the fracture site. after the graft is packed, then I give a compression. I complete the thing and I give a compression. Now I'm pushing the stick and then the screw is completely buried in the compression. So now I confirm my position of the screw in both all the three views. Once this is confirmed, now I have to take the vascular radiogram and go and put it on the trough and just keep it in a position there. So size is a little larger because I take a little bigger chunk. So I'm going to nibble it in my size what I require. So once I nibble it, so we don't usually do a retrograde of trying to pull the graft because when you try to pull the graft, the pedicle gets detached. So it's safer to push the with the artery and gently remove it from the other side. If you try to put the artery from the other side and pull it, sometimes it just bone comes off and soft tissue remains. Now once you take it there in the graft and then position there, and then pack it there, and you can see that's the area where it is put there. And once it is put there, you just use your thumb, just push it in, and so that it just sits in the place. Once it is there in the place, then I use a small punch to just gently tap from the edge so that it just fits. Some people use cameras to fix it. I'm not going to fix that. The pedicle of the graft is safe. Now, this is all controlled on the graft position in there. And you can see that's the graft what I have to get a small piece there side of this area. Now we get released. Then close the capsule and see that it won't strangle the rest in there. So I put a loose stitch on the capsule of the wrist joint. Close the reticulum of second compartment. Then close the reticulum of the fourth compartment. Sometimes it's difficult here, but still you will be able to close it. I don't use any drain. You get a good closure. I press a putting tissue and I usually put subcuticular acrolein because I don't like to change the dressing or remove because the graft is just sitting there. I don't like to disturb by doing any post-operative dressing for 6 weeks. So I just put a subcuticular switch, put a plaster cast and leave it for 6 weeks without disturbing. So that you don't, whenever I try to change it, when I'm changing the dressing, if there's a flexion or extension of the wrist, there is a possibility that the wrist can get dislodged. Finally confirm it, and then for 6 weeks stop relatively. I don't change the dressing. For 6 weeks we remove the sutures and give a splint and start. Thank you.
Good morning. This won't be a real life surgery rather than a edited video based on, so you have to bear with me for a few slides before I go to video. So distal radius are quite common but not very symptomatic. Most of the patients tend to do well without much symptoms even if they have an extraarticular malunion. These are more common after initial non-surgical treatment or even bleeding, especially when you are dealing with osteopenic bone or in fractures which are linked unstable. With the advent of locking plates, we are able to achieve quite robust fixation. So extraarticular malunions after molar lock plate fixation are rather uncommon. As I said, most malunions are not symptomatic, but some are. Most patients present with chronic pain and weakness, predominantly on the ulnar side, due to ulnar side infarction and sometimes also due to arthritis at the DRUJ. These patients also have subtle signs of carpal instability, which might contribute to pain and weakness as well. They also present with loss of motion both at the radiocarpal and the distal radioulnar joint, and often they have an unsightly cosmetic deformity as well. If you classify the types of distal radius fracture malunions, you can broadly classify them into extraarticular and intraarticular. Extraarticular are of course more common, and of the extraarticular type, dorsally annulated malunions are much more common compared to the ones with molar annulation. While intraarticular malunions can cause obvious problems, extraarticular malunions can cause a lot of alteration biomechanics as well across the disc and the DRUJ. For example, if you have a dorsally annulated deformity, is more common, it can cause asymmetric loading across the radiocarpal joint, which can increase dorsal loads, and also it can cause carpal instability both at the radiocarpal and the midcarpal joints. And most often, this sort of carpal instability is adaptive and often settles down after surgery, as you can see here. Radial shortening, on the other hand, can also cause problems with DRJ kinematics. It can cause ulnar abutment, causing pain, and can also cause weakness in grip. So how to approach these non-unions? If you are dealing with symptomatic non-union in an adult patient, you can opt for a distal ulnar sleeve resection, especially if the patient is old, the patient has osteopenia and has only ulnar side of pain due to impaction, or sometimes if they have ulnar arthritis. But if you are dealing with a younger patient with good quality bone, you need to custom-make your treatment. Ulnar shortening is an option if the patient has symptoms of the ulnar side, and on radiographs they are predominantly radial shortening and not an angular deformity. If they have both an angular deformity and radial shortening, then it would make sense to attempt an osteotomy on the distal radius. You can do it in different ways. You can use an open wedge osteotomy from the dorsal side, or you can do a closed wedge osteotomy on the volar side if you are doing a dorsally animated non-union. The only thing is, when you are using a closed wedge osteotomy from the volar side, you always have to combine with an ulnar shortening because you are losing length over there. Whereas an open wedge osteotomy from the dorsal side, you are gaining length, so you can sometimes, in fact most of the times, get away without an ulnar shortening. What we do is a volar walking plate assisted type of osteotomy, which is an inch type of osteotomy, where you fix your volar walking plate in the distal segment and then achieve correction of all parameters by inching open the dorsal side. So this is how we do it. A volar walking plate is initially fixed to the distal segment first, and then it is open to create dorsal gap. You can distract it and also correct deformity, open it asymmetrically to correct inclination, length, and also the volar tilt. At the end of it, you may choose to graft, and I would advise it's better to graft it. And after it's done, in some cases, if you cannot achieve the entire radial length without too much of distraction, it might make sense to go ahead and do an ulnar shortening. So this is some schematics about the procedure, like we do a standard FCR approach, go ahead with the brachioradialis release, and then do an osteotomy in line with the articular surface of the radius, and then you go again and do an osteal release, and then go again, do a volar lock plating, fix it to the distal segment first, correct all the deformities, and then realign the osteotomy by fixing it proximally, and finish it with bone graft. This is a case of a 17-month-old non-union and 33-year-old female who is an active professional. It's got ulnar cerebral pain, which is limiting work. And these are the radiographs. You can see the amount of dorsal film, the top of stability as well, and the positive ulnar variance. And this is a normal side X-ray. And she had limited RO1, she had limited palmar flexion and also supination. And an MRI also showed some problems, some irritating lesions at the ulnar side, and there was no tear for the TFCs. So this is the video. So we do a standard FCR approach, starting from scaphoid tubercle, extending it proximally by around 8 to 10 centimeters. Enter the plane between the FCR and the radial neurovascular bundle. Once you are incising the floor of the FCR, make sure you stay away from the median nerve and then retract the FPL away from the radius, and you can enter the space of the organ. Once you go there, you can do a tenotomy or as a lengthening of the brachioradialis followed by elevating the pronator quadratus in an L-shaped fashion. You can choose to do the osteotomy at the non-union site or just proximal to the distal radial nerve joint, depending on where your osteotomy, where your non-union is. The spin is initially inserted along or parallel to the tilted articular surface of the distal radius to guide in direction when we ultimately do the osteotomy. The osteotomy is done parallel to the distal radius articular surface, and as you can see, the plane doesn't sit on the proximal aspect at all, indicating the amount of dorsal tilt that is present. So once you get adequate fixation in the distal segment, maybe like 3-4 screws to start with, then you can go again and correct the deformity by realigning it with the proximal segment. And you can see from the KY, you can see that we have achieved the necessary volar tilt that is required. So then you can complete your fixation once you have done your fixation of the distal radius, make sure like you have got everything right. Your radial inclination, length, and the ulnar of the lower. In this case, we used autologous bone graft of the iliac crest. Make sure you back them. Especially in older patients, you chose not to do a bone grafting. Probably it's wrong. In younger patients, if you are dealing with like smaller corrections, you can get away without bone grafting as well. And once you have done the radius, make sure you have restored the radial length. If you cannot restore radial length without too much of distraction on the distal radius, risking rounding in, you can go again on the ulnar side and do a ulnar shortening. In this case, at the end of the procedure, we still add 3 mm difference compared to the opposite side in terms of ulnar variance, so we have to go again onto the ulnar side and do an ulnar shortening. You can choose to do it at either side. You can either do it distally or you can do it proximally as well. In this case, we choose to do it distally, so we chose the molar side to plate it. So once you have exposed it, mark your osteotomy site. Make sure you get adequate fixation on both sides. So we resected a 3 mm sleeve of distal. And once you have done that, make sure you fix the ulnar osteotomy under compression. So you can use an article tension device, or in this case, we just use a. So that would be. And these are the post-operative X-rays and follow-up X-rays after 8 years of doing the osteotomy. So this is unpublished data which we are planning to publish soon. We had pretty good results in terms of our own, both flexion extension arc and conospination arc improved significantly as well the grip strength and the functional scores. We add some complications, non-union and delayed union can occur, especially if you do a distraction type of osteotomy rather than each type of osteotomy. So if you are aiming to distract it too much, make sure don't do it, go again to the ulnar side and do an ulnar shortening. Tendon ruptures can occur, especially if you are not careful with your saw or your osteotomy, you open the osteotomy, but also the delayed fraction when the sharp edges over the dorsal side can result in accretion rupture of dorsal tendons. Loss of reduction we saw in 2 patients out of 22 and also persistent symptoms on the ulnar side in 2 patients out of 28. And these were very similar results in published literature as well. Present with pain in the thumb. Right hand of the lady, housewife, 1 year. She has taken painkillers of her own volition. History. Anything else you want to know from the history? Would you like to know whether she had any trauma recently or in the past? She had no history that she can think of. That's important to rule out a few things here. Anything else you want to know?
You want to know how the pain is brought in?
The pain presents with a screwing movement, twisting.
Any other comorbidities that she has? No. Okay, you finish.
Before the X-ray, you want to see anything on inspection?
You want to do the clinical examination, obviously.
Right.
So you want to see if there is on inspection, there is any swelling, where the swelling is.
Okay.
And also, you go with your regular examination, inspection, palpation, movements.
Okay, regular examination. Can you dilate on the word regular?
Yes, I mean you go with your this set pattern. So inspection, you look for swelling, any local, any edema that you see, and how is the on palpation where the tenderness is exactly. Is it the joint or is it coming along the tendon sheaths? And then you examine the movements.
Okay, so most important thing is the pinpoint tenderness. Where exactly is the tenderness? In the history, the most important thing is any history of trauma. If a history recently or in the past, in this area you should consider the differential diagnosis of trauma. So why? Because in this area the most important thing, trauma is non-union scaphoid. So the painful, as I said, adduction is very painful. Does it help you in the diagnosis?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So what is the test you are going to do? If the adduction is painful in a 60-year-old housewife with no history of trauma,
Say that again, please.
60-year-old female, no history of trauma, pain on adduction. There is a swelling localized on inspection alone, without touching, you can see there is a bump there.
Yeah. So you are looking more in terms of probably arthritic changes there.
Absolutely. Fine. So we come to a differential diagnosis of what few things can happen in this area. First thing they can help, as was rightly pointed out, the location of the tenderness. The location of the distal radius, you are looking at Bickerman disease. As you go more distally, in the tenderness over the anatomical stump box, you are looking at non-unionscriptal scaphoid. Third thing you can look, if it is more dorsal-radial, you are looking at STD, scaphoid, trapezium, trapezoid, arthritis, rarer. But the most important thing, almost 30% of females will have arthritis of the first carpometacarpal, CMC joint, PSL joint arthritis here. So, as was asked, we took an X-ray. What do you see on the X-ray?
Yeah.
Advanced arthritis probably stage 3 of the first CMC joint. Sorry, it's stage 4 because the SCT joint will also involve in this. So it's pretty advanced stage.
Pain affecting her, what do you do?
Sorry?
What do you do? She has taken painkillers enough 1 year.
Yeah. Most of these patients actually the X-ray doesn't correlate with the clinical symptoms.
Right.
So I would try trial of splitting, activity modification, and then assess how
She had pain for 1 year. You still want to try conservative management?
If she hasn't tried splitting, definitely I would try it.
Okay. When you draw your line, if the patient says I have got pain for 1 year, how long will you try conservative management?
I would try for another 2 months.
After 2 months, she still has pain.
Then she has to be prepared for surgical.
What surgery?
In this case, I would try a trapeziectomy, and since the
Thank you. Okay, so this is what was offered to this lady. The trapezium was removed and she lived happily thereafter. Second patient I present. This had a patient who had a breast injury in the hand, present with a black finger. What do you do?
First, remove the stitches and the wires.
Thank you. Next.
And the tip is actually not totally gone.
Okay.
Probably I would wait for a few more days unless it's a wet gangrene.
Anybody wants to differ? Raise your hand. You want to attitude? Nobody wants to attitude. Thank you. This is what precisely was done. They removed the stitches, and this is what happened. Only the skin, they were dermal loss, superficial. Only some spectacles in grafting was required. So remember, sutures is a big thing. Third patient, I am going to stop here. This patient presented with a swollen finger, cold. What do I do here? Cold finger.
Just remove the stitches and observe it over time. And if there is obvious a circumferential injury, then explore the digital nerves and the veins and the artery, and then proceed accordingly.
Okay, absolutely. We remove the sutures, and can you believe it? This went down to put survival there. So remember, if in doubt, don't suture the wound, leave it open. Probably it might have been infected, but it will not definitely die. Therefore, while it's preparing, patient presented 50-year-old presented pain on the lateral aspect of the elbow. I'll stop here. What is this diagnosed pain here in this region? 1 year duration.
The first mark shows towards the tennis elbow.
Yes.
But your thumb is pointing somewhere else. So
Right.
it looks more over the radial tunnel, which is
Absolutely. So most important thing is all the radial elbow pains are not tennis elbow. See if this is bony pain, this tennis elbow, but it is about 4 fingers that distally, it is radial tunnel syndrome here. The motor branch quickly went up this thing here. You will see the motor branch of the radial nerve going under the supinator here. This is the sensory branch. This is the motor branch which is going under the arcade of Ross here. You cut this here and the pain goes away. So remember, all radial elbow pains are not tennis elbows. Bony pain, tennis elbow, soft tissue pain, consider radial tunnel syndrome and decompress the time permits. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what will you do over here? Quick. Ashok, what will you do?
Yeah, I think I'll probably end up fixing this, but can I have a seat with you?
No. Okay. Do you need a CTO here? Probably a CTO would be useful.
Well, you can have a traction view.
Why can't we try conservative?
Yeah, so conservative, okay. Dinesh?
Well, you can see a traction view if you don't want to give us a CT scan at all. And it seems like the T fracture or a 4-part fracture of the distal ventrum. There might be, if you see it in the CT, probably you'll get a better idea.
Yeah, there is an intra-articular extension, you know it very well because
Yeah.
of this staying over here. And this type 3 ulna. This way. So I'll tell you what was done. Is it okay? 70 plus.
The radius seems to have collapsed because it has become now a positive ulnar variance here, and this is going to collapse. If you see,
This here, it's quite okay. This
Yes.
is probably immediate post-op.
but is this a positive ulnar variance? Here I see there is a positive ulnar variance now.
Okay. So what do you expect? Anticipate over here?
I think it will collapse. I
Okay.
think it's like unstable.
Collapsed. Now what? But why did it collapse? Any idea?
I don't think it was unstable at all. I think yes.
So basically at this stage, osteoporotics 2, would you go in for a K-wiring or something else?
Amit, can you go back to the previous slide, pre-op X-ray? If you see there's a dorsal comminution there, the moment I see the dorsal comminution, I'll try to persuade the patient for a plating.
Okay, that's fine.
The other thing you could also consider is doing an X-fix, get the traction and then think about fixation.
Okay, let's go ahead. What will you do for this now? Do you want to do anything or you can accept 70 plus lady?
Well, it depends on the side of the limb, which side.
Are you happy with this?
No.
Okay. What next? What will you do? And now that it has been operated, you have to operate. So how would you correct it?
How many weeks?
This was around 3 months.
At 3 months into the overhead and assess at a later date what
Okay.
is restricting.
I'll tell you what was done. Look, the CT was done. Whenever in a CT, if the ulnar head is not seen, it's in another plane. So what I was pointing out over here, you can see
The DRUG.
the DRUG, yeah, the distal radial method, the distal ulnar. Yeah, and the pins out 16% extra chances of infection. So this was operated and reversed. With this type of a DRUG, I don't think a K-wiring would be enough. You have to go down and put a plate. This was the final result of this patient. Pain following a fall, 2 months. Not responding to conservative treatment. You can see that specific thing. The ulnar styloid, the lateral view is separated, probably the ulnar.
The head is popping up.
Yeah.
Is it reducible? That's one thing we should see.
Look. Unstable. It's highly unstable.
Is it symptomatic?
It is.
Do you have a full length forearm X-ray?
No.
Looking at the elbow as well, always it helps.
Yeah. True. But now what will you do?
At 2 months, it's preferable to reattach the PFC back to it.
Okay. The PFCC and the palmar radioulnar ligament injury. So this was done. Reattachment of the ligament to the fovea, and this was precisely post-operatively. Post-operatively also this was a bit unstable, and hence we had to put this wire. Now, which ulnar styloid fractures to fix? Type 1 are these. Tip of the styloid and the cervical neck of the ulnar neck, stable BRUJ. Type 1A with a flake, displaced or undisplaced. Will you fix this? Type 2. Type 2 is through the TFCC or through the base. Avulsion from the base. Now look at this. Displaced complete styloid. Ulnar styloid I'm talking about. Radius, so you will have to fix. With this type of an injury, will you conserve?
Better to assess after fixing the radius.
No, you will not conserve.
No, definitely.
Okay. So after fixing the radius, this one.
After fixing the radius, I'll allot the distal radial joint and position, supination and mid position.
Yeah.
In all three positions, if it is comparable to the other side, then I'll leave that standard process.
Okay. No need to fix. This was okay. So we decided not to fix. And this is the final result. Follow the outstretched hand, 36-year-old. Where's the ulnar styloid? Comment.
Traction is important.
Yeah. What do you do?
Traction view.
Unfortunately, not.
Traction view on the operating table. If no traction view, then of course you would have reduced the radius. Reduce the radius.
Yeah. And
Fix the radius.
that's the ulnar styloid there.
I'll still fix the radius first.
Yeah. True. Now
Fixing the radius. Now you see that there is an increased space between the radius and the ulna. That means there is instability of the distal radial joint.
still unstable. Yeah.
Because the most important thing is not the styloid process here. The important thing, the key that there is something going on, there is a space between the radius and ulna. That means there is instability here. That can widen only if the soft tissue holding the two bones is damaged. Now because the styloid process, now the second thing that you will see is the migration of the styloid process. It has migrated more radially. That means that flavor bone is taking the foveal attachment of the ligament of subtroenta.
Yeah.
I'll not still call it TFCCI, but I feel the moment you say TFCC is there, there is a number of things TFCC consists of, and we have to be very specific. And the specific is ligamentum subtroentum is to be reattached by attaching the styloid process of the ulna.
Okay. This was done.
Yes. Now, I am seeing every time in the previous X-ray also you showed, once you have fixed it, you also fix the shaft of the radius ulna. Why do you do that?
For this gap. I did that for the gap.
No, I see a
fixed
wire
this.
from the radius ulna.
This
Yes.
wire, huh? This wire was done for this.
But is fixing the styloid process, is fixing the styloid process alone with a plaster and supination not adequate? You all the time fix this?
Not always. After fixation of the ulnar styloid, if you find instability still in the distal radial joint, then I fix this.
Do you see increase incidence of stiffness because of this wire?
No, I don't pursue with this wire for a long time. Remove it.
How long you keep that wire?
Here for around 4 to 6 weeks. Now that was done. Removal of that wire, and this is 2 years post-op.
You see as a restriction of progression there.
Yeah, to some extent. But
Again, I see this. I used to put the wires almost 10 years. I stopped putting those wires because getting those, that pronation supination is a nightmare for these patients. And after a few days, a few months, the patient abandoned treatment.
no, okay, but after removal of the wire, this was quite stable and this was quite near.
The problem here is that the distal segment is actually sashally translated. There is a spike on the medial side at the DRH. Actually, that sashal correction has to be corrected at the time of plating the radius. That will add to the stability of your TFCC. Then we mostly will not need the radial wire, which will add to stability.
Okay, accepted. A flake or tip of the displaced or undisplaced ulnar styloid, if it's complete, it falls back, it's stable, nothing to be done. If it is unstable, even if it falls back, if it's unstable, then fix it. If it does not fall back, then fix it. With the interosseous membrane intact, sectioning of the palmar and dorsal radioulnar ligaments does not cause significant changes of the ulnar relationships in pronation and supination. Intraosseous membrane is a major stabilizer of the DRUJ. With calmer dorsal and intraosseous section, there is global instability and the DRUJ is most stable in supination. Thank you. We end over here.
Of all the places in the intraosseous membrane, the distal edge, the distal oblique bundle is the most important thing. So after you
Distal oblique bundle, yeah.
And fix it. So you go from there to there. So you get one screw from the lesser tuberosity into the head too, and that's the reduction. That is the joint line you need to see. If you have a pure posterior dislocation and it's an unstable situation, then you can do a modified McLaughlin where you actually osteotomize the lesser tuberosity and fix it back. If you have a avulsed GT, this is one a very rare case where you found the LT and the GT, the whole thing got avulsed and the humeral head was sitting posteriorly. So we had to fix the greater tuberosity, the lesser tuberosity and repair the rotator cuff back onto the shaft. So you don't need plates for this. What you need is a fixation of the tuberosities and repair of the rotator cuff back onto the shoulder. This is another example. So going up, screw if you have a large fragment, but I would prefer mostly to use this sort of double row fixation or transosseous equivalent fixation like rotator cuff, because that gives you better outcomes. But think of an arthroplasty if you have a large defect and a reverse shoulder replacement, the tuberosities are not going to heal properly. Anterior dislocations, they are often associated with the glenoid rim fractures too. You need to identify them. One of my bosses used to do even close reduction and wire fixation for an anterior dislocation. He was very well skilled in doing repaired the rotator cuff along with the fixation of the glenoid rim as well. Some of the patients have done a lateral J procedure as well. When you get to neglected dislocations, this gentleman came about 4 months later from Rajasthan, was having physiotherapy, had a neglected dislocation. We did a modified McLaughlin and he got full range of motion. This gentleman had a 4-part fracture, malunited. He was 32-year-old. So we had to osteotomize the whole thing, the tuberosities, the shaft, and reduce the joint and then fix it. So post-operatively, I never had to use any aeroplane splints or anything like that. Just an arm pouch is enough. And start pendular motion at 1 week and strengthening at 4 weeks. Thank you.
Or do hemi or reverse shoulder. Okay, we will see why we want to have this row. So there is a complex controversy of doing this decision making of possible fracture. There may be different ways to skin a cat, but whatever you do, operative is or non-operative, the first shot is best shot. Before going to discussion, the horse is tell that shoulder is a very forgiving joint when one does not operate, but can be very unforgiving if one does operate and something goes wrong. So we have to know the non-operative management, nothing much, but we don't know it. And most of these patients, these selected patients are elderly people, they have comorbidities, and they have 67% of nerve injury. So irrespective of treatment, they take at least long time, 1 year for recovery. And this practice can be treated conservative. So Professor Grauman has brought this concept of reverse process, where the articulation glenoid is convex and humeral is concave, to replace the rotator cuff. This is the only replacement done to replace the rotator cuff. The center of rotation is distalized and midalized, so the torque generated, the shearing forces are converted to the compression forces. So this is an ideal indication, rotator cuff, but is now used for extend relative indications to other places. So coming to our topic, so we do this surgery when we think that we are doing arthroplasty for the ischemic head. So these are the cases. We can think that head is going to be ischemic, and we have already told that the vascularity. And so what we can do, either hemi or reverse shoulder. So if we are doing a hemi and the tuberosity heals, patient is happy, he is lifting. But if it doesn't heal, it's failure, we can't lift. So it is all or none phenomenon. So because there is a 20% or 50% tuberosity complications. So this literature says that people elderly, above 70 years, especially females, tuberosity problems are there. Whereas in the reverse shoulder, 120 you can get easily, so predictable around 100, 120. because elevation is not influenced by tuberosity healing, elevation, and rehabilitation is much easier. There is a recent trend of doing more of reverse shoulder compared to hemi in selected patients. So indications above 70 years, severe tuberosity, metaphysical comminution, weight, osteoporosis. So where do you think that it might compromise tuberosity healing? Again, contraindications, delta should be functional, deficient, glenoid should be normal. So before we go into that, we should know the disadvantage and survivorship, especially the reverse shoulder. So in literature, the complications are vary from 7 to 68%. And starting from instability, hematoma, RSD, infection, notching, all these are there. So I want to show a few slides of the survivorship by this wash. In 2006, they said that it has to be done exclusively in above 70 years. Implant survives around 10 to 12 years average. So principle is, we are doing the final distal part cemented, proximal uncemented metaphysis, tuberosity, osteosynthesis, and get the gothic arch. So these are 5 steps. First step, go use the biceps, find out the way up proximally, open the book, so get the control of tuberosities, and fix the glenoid, lower, avoid superior tilt, humeral component, see the proper height, and version I fix at 20 degrees. So not more than normal in heavy, we do around 30 to get the tuberosity properly, and proper tuberosity reconstruction. Whatever they do, hemi or reverse shoulder, tuberosity has to heal among themselves, and tuberosis should heal to the shaft. Then only the function will happen. And there has to be sutured both horizontally and vertical concept, sutures. And if it heals, then they have elevation and external rotation. But if it doesn't heal, people still can elevate, but they don't have horizontal balance. They lose the external rotation, they lose. So companies have done reverse shoulder. So in the fracture thing, if you are doing, should be low profile one, coated, laser marks, suture things, and go over with 135 degrees, because it gives the more anatomical reconstruction and gothic arch is maintained. And few slides from the literature, but reverse shoulder, the elevation is more compared to hemi. If you see this paper of complication of 30 cases, 11 cases had complications. So complications depends on surgeon. What use operating? See, one series is around 31%, one by Pascal is around 4%. So reverse shoulder in hemi, the better function results, low osteomal complication rates. And if you are doing the reverse shoulder, if you suture the tuberosis well, good external rotation. And people started getting good results with acute. So people started using in chronic fracture sequelae, but there important is length and restoration of soft tissue is very important. And as of now, the cochlear registers, the complication has come down to 10%. And this again, I told fracture sequelae, people are started using this in their type 4 sequelae. So people getting confidence, they started using chronic fracture sequelae, and again they have 10% complication rate. Here, the last paper. So in fracture sequelae, if you are doing the greater tuberosity, osteotomy, those results are not good. So category 1 did better where there was no greater tuberostomy. So this is a case 1. I told the first case, the 71-year gentleman, following of a VAP from Amravati. Now he wants to shift to Vizag. So it's a fracture shoulder dislocation. And again, once you get the control of tuberosities, head is extracted. And tuberosis, osteosynthesis, tuberosis repair, and seeing the final tension and the shoulder of the biceps and all. And this is the post-op X-ray. This case presented 4 months after the injury, was not able to sleep properly, varus collapse, non-union tuberosity escape and screw cut out. So we did surgery 5 months after this primary surgery and 6 months after the reverse shoulder. This person presented 2 years after hemi, forward elevation around 40 degrees and fixed extension deformity. So hemi was under remote implant and reverse shoulder was done 6 months, and this is 1 year after reverse. So the case of pathological fracture. So stage 1 chondrosarcoma, we did reverse with lattice-mat tendon disc major transfer. And this is 6 months after the procedures, he is back to the job. So there was a debate 10 years back whether it's hemi or versus reverse shoulder, but hemi was the most, but reverse was in selected cases. But the present debate, what Dipti was saying, it is even in elderly people, the fixation versus reverse shoulder. And they can use a graph, corticostal graph, use a bone cement. So even if it fails or it goes for avian, you can come to reverse shoulder. But if you want to do a hemi in hemi patients, go for a platform hemi. So we can convert into reverse shoulder if something goes wrong. If tuberosity doesn't heal. So rationale is there is a predictable and rapid recovery of daily activities and no need of extensive physiotherapy, and we don't know the pre-injury status, and rotator cuff disease increases as age increases. This is a good paper of physiotherapy visits, only 10 visits.
So this is a topic not on me. Clinical expertise will give you the tips which are not there to the replacement, semi and total replacement and reverse shoulder replacement. Philos is a one place, day to day life you use regularly. So in these 8 minutes, I am going to say a few things about the philos plate and how I do and what not to miss. So this is the ergonomics of the plate. So very well noted anywhere. So not much to say. So plate itself has different holes from below upwards. Many holes are there in which the proximal part has 9 holes in different angles and shaft has multi holes. So the proximal part which will have multi-directional screws which will be fixed into the head of the humerus to have good hold. The one important screw is this: at the level of the E we have car screws. So these are must to prevent the collapse of the head. And we have one shaft screw which is there to get the lag effect, just like there you see in the right side picture. So to prevent the gap between the shaft and the plate. So the position of plate should be dead lateral and it should be 2 to 3 millimeters lateral to the surface and 5 to 11 mm below the tip of the GT to prevent the impingement. So you should avoid the displacement like this during surgery so that the screw may go up and off the shaft. And if you go upwards, it may cause the impingement like this. Patient position, I generally do the surgery in the supine position with the side table. We have a small bump below the shoulder, so which will give a good draping and also it is better for manipulation and also the C-arm, we can see the lateral very easily. So beaches I have not done anywhere. So this is the body setup where the C-arm is the head side and the shoulder is placed in the reducing table and the side table is the abductor is possible and that C-arm will be seen above. Surgeon will be sitting into the head side. So this is the lateral position. So before going to draping, we have to check the AP lateral of the CM can be done or not. We have to check beforehand. Sometimes the table has iron rods which will come into the play. It will go very annoying during surgery. So that place should be before we have to check before the draping. So the surgical approach I generally go with a dead-of-pectoral approach, which is an extensor approach. An adequate exposure is possible, but a little inconvenience is there for lateral plate because it is an anterior approach. We are putting a plate on the lateral side, so some tightness will be there in the deltoid muscle. For the deltoid split approach, the other approach we have explained, but in the axial nerve there, where extensor approach is not possible. So sometimes usually do for Bico plates like plating the deltoid split approach. So the initiation is from coracoid process to the medial shaft of the humerus. Usually a straight line. If you put the limb in the abductor position, if you keep it side by position, it will be almost curved one. So initial stage we added the cephalic vein, and we will follow it up to the pavectal fascia, which will be dividing the laterally we have the deltoid muscle and middle we have coracobrachialis and in the floor we have the shaft of the humerus, and the medial circumflex branches will be there coming into the floor. So to increase the exposure, deltoid insertion will partially be there, and a proximal part of the pectoral transmit may be severed to increase the exposure. And this will allow to put the levers in the middle side. Cartilaging the ascending branch of the middle circumflexion artery and protecting the lateral limits in the cephalic vein are necessary. And we have to safeguard the nerves, two nerves, one is the axial nerve, other is the musculocutaneous nerve, which is 6 mm below the acromion is the axial nerve, and 2 mm below the coracoid process is the coracoid process is the musculocutaneous nerve. So planning the reduction and preliminary fixation is, first we have to assess the anatomical head, and this is to be fixed to the shaft with a 3 mm K-wire or a small stimulus pin. Commonly head will be abducted position and shaft will be in the varus position. So we have to reduce that one. After reduction we will apply K-wire. Later the greater tuberosity and lesser tuberosity will be attached to the tag sutures. So they will be tied to each other, and then a plate is applied to fix the tuberosity to the shaft. So before going that, we have to check the reduction in the AP and lateral must. Sometimes in AP it may look normally and there is a good reduction, but in lateral it may have angulated one. So we have to see AP lateral must before doing any fixation. So bone grafting has to be planned. The fracture is the fibula plus cancellous or cancellous sufficient. The osteoporotic bone, the shaft, which is medial calcar division is there, fibula grafting is necessary. And where the middle calcar is normal, so grow graft organelles. So like this, the fibula is kept in the medullary pinna to get the middle calcar stability. Or a simple cancellous graft can be sufficient for a combination. So we have to plan, is a varus or a valgus. So normally it is a 135 degrees, next of time is there. So range is 150 to 148. And beforehand we have to reduce the fracture, the varus or valgus. So the varus valgus is calculated like this, so we can anybody, no problem. So reduction of the head, achieve the head shaft angle in the forward fractures. Head will be like a egg-shell, filling up the void and pushing it up and pulling the shaft below downwards. Usually reduces the head into the shaft. So we have to check the CM and AP lateral piece. So generally angle angulation will be there. So elbow will be lifted upward so that the angulation will be prevented. So then that position should be stable with the thick K-wires. When there is a middle calcar deficiency or severe osteoporosis, you should attach the cortical graft. So this is a K-wire placement. And so video is not running here. Okay. So this is a K-wire application. the cable should be parallel to the shaft and it started below, 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters below the fracture surface, so that you will have a particle strength, and it should be fixed up to the head of the anatomical head. So the cable should not be obstruct the future placement of the plate. So reduction of tuberosis, there should be 3 suture tags are there. One is the supraspinal suture tag, another is the infraspinalis, third one is the subscapularis suture tag. So regarding the fracture, these suture tags they are tied to each other. So the supraspinalis will be going superiorly and posteriorly. Should pull it downwards and anteriorly. So whereas subscapularis going medially and inferiorly, should pull laterally and upwards. So usually number 5 equipment sutures are used. So they are tied to each other again. So what is sutures are going to go? Don't pull by the grafting the bone, because the bone will be like a shell and it will break. So always the suture should be go through the tendinous part of the bone tendon. So other videos are they are not free. So if the plate is fixed and 2 to 3 millimeters connected to the lateral edge, 5 to 8 mm below the tip of the GT, fix the position with the cables to our plate and check on the CM. And cable fixation of the plate, which will be avoid displacement, and also it allows internal rotation so that we can apply the screw very easily. This is the screws application. Always apply the calcar screws first to prevent the medial calcar screws are applied so that the prevent collapse. So the screws are multi-directional in the head region. So usually they have the aiming device. So generally we will have aiming device. You can apply freehand also. Sometimes the simple guide wire. So for that we reconstructed another plate to know the which direction screws are there, so that in the same direction you can apply the screws by seeing the outside the table. So the same case we have done. So key points are the approach Varga to short stated result in the cephalic vein is the guide for the approach. Ascending branch of the MCAC should be buttressed. Angular nerve, muscular nerve will be protected, and rotator interval or inline rotator fracture should expose the fracture. So this is the plate is too high. Plate is too high, and greater tuberosity is not fixed and is not reduced. Calcar screws are not applied, and screw ends are very short. That's why there is a failure. So this is again whereas vertical collapse is there because there are no calcar screws and wire not filled, so that will collapse. And sharp class 2 is not applied, so plate is not applied to the bed. So this is wire reduction is not acceptable. So this is valgus fixation. This also calculus is not there. So the problem here, left side the problem, right side the solution. So the screw should be into the up to the bone, subcortical level, and calculus screw should also be applied, and lax screw should be applied. So thank you. So most of the videos are not played, that's the problem. So actually everything is in the videos. So no videos here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. The entire talk will be regarding a multi-lock nail device and market device in this, but I have not received any financial aid from them yet, although I don't mind. So through this presentation we will see first why we will think about nailing these fractures. Since this is a newer implant, I will be giving some slides about the nail design. Then we will see the surgical technique of how it is to be done. And if time permits, we will be not unduly injured. In the sense, if the patient has a proximal humans with a lower limb, then the patient will be carrying the entire weight to use a walker or a crutches. So upper limb will act like a lower limb. So a load bearing versus load sharing concept comes in that. The patient should not be a post paralysis because we will be using hand for the hand to be partisan gate. The patient should not be entirely due to osteoporosis. It's a big problem with the plates. The screws can back out. The plate needs to be perfectly seated. If it's little bit high, you can have some abdominal impingement leading on to loss of adduction. If it's a little bit low, we will not get the calcasco, especially in Indian profile. And if you don't get a calcasco in a plate, it invariably leads to secondary varus collapse. If it's a little bit anterior, it can lead on to biceps tendinosis. Now this is more often recognized now, causing anterior shoulder pain in all our ratings. If it's a little bit posterior, we all know it. So it has to be perfect. And it has been proved out that in all 3 and 4 part fractures, most of these patients will not be able to get back their full range of movement, and even those who get will getting that only after 8 months. So these, if all of these criteria are okay with our patients, then we can definitely go ahead and do a plating. Otherwise, think about a nailing. It's not that nailing gives excellent results. If you go through the history, nailing was disastrous in proximal humeral fractures, and even in those which went on to heal, the functional results were poor. So what are the problems faced exactly? The problems faced in the previous generation nails was the insertion was through the tendinous junction. It was at the sulcus, and that's exactly where the rotator cuff came and attached. So invariably, either during the insertion or during reading or during the incision of the nail, the rotator cuff needs to be chewed off. And we know that in proximal humans, it's not the unit that matters, but it is the rotator cuff that matters, or the functional outcome. Reduction is always a trouble because we are taking a lateral entry, and that invariably leads on to varus during the surgery. The nail used to occupy the place where the tuberosity should fall back. So tuberosity is always positioned off its natural anatomy. Screw cutout was a big problem with the previous generation of nails. Now most of these were taken care of with this newer generation. This is the second generation of the nail called multi-lock nail, which is the straight nail design. The insertion point, as we can see, is much medial. It's in line. So there is no problems with the rotator cuff, chewing of the rotator cuff in this design of the nail. The reduction, if you can extrapolate our findings in proximal femur nailings, whenever we took a lateral entry, it always led on to varus intraoperatively. So we always medialized the entry, even went to the perineum. The same thing, if you can think about it, proximal humans, if we medialize the entry, the varus maladition is never going to be a problem. So that's what the newer nail design by default did it. Since it's much more medial, the tuberosity can come back and fall into its natural anatomy, it's not impeding in the way. And the screws, which are of previous generation, has been replaced by bolts, so there is no point contact over the GT. We know this GT is very flimsy in most of these patients, it can shatter. So that has been taken care of with these bolts. And there have been holes provided in the bolts through which you can suture the rotator cuff. So all these additions makes our life much easier. Screw cutout is no more of an issue because through this bolt there is something called a screw in screw. One more screw goes through the main bolt, outside the nail but into the bone, and this is at a tangential angle of 30 degrees. We can't imagine any physiological forces which can act perpendicular to both these screws for these screws to back out. So this can never happen with a nail. It's been proved. This is how it will look like. The green ones are the screw through the bolt, but it goes outside the nail, and it goes and has some capture in the posteromedial part. So after knowing the nail design, let's go through the surgical techniques. Before that, the positioning. Positioning can be done in a wheelchair, but in our institute we do it in a supine position. As simple as to say that if any setup, if you can do a plate fixation, the same setup you can do a nail. So there is nothing extra required for a nailing surgical surgery to be done. I slightly do it differently. We do it differently in our institute. We get the CM from the opposite side, because for a big surgeon like me, a big dimension surgeon like me, any extra millimeter of space is much more important. So when we are getting a lateral, me and my assistants don't need to move away. So get the CM from the opposite end. This is how we get a AP of the proximal. This is how we get a AP of the proximal humerus in that position, and once you tilt it to about 30 to 40 degrees, we get the AP of the shoulder joint, in which there is no overlap in the proximal humerus and the glenoid, and we tilt it the other way, we get a translate. So as we said that the CM stays stationary, the surgeon assistant stays stationary, we have enough space to work around. So So I'll be showing this case of a 63-year-old gentleman who presented to us on New Year's Eve with a 4-part fracture, subluxation of proximal humerus. The incision, that is a purpose process. This is the acromion. That's our traditional dentopectoral approach, and this is the dentoid split approach. So in between these two, coming along the entry part of the acromion, is the incision for the nail. This is the mark for the nerve. Okay, so this is the traditional anterolateral approach called as anteroacromial approach for nailing purposes. Take the incision, stop well short of the nerve. Nerve is about 5 to 5.5 cm below the tip of the acromion. So you can stop well short. 2 to 3 cm proximate to the acromion. Between the antler and the middle fibers of the deltoid is what we go. Then once we are there, take 2 stitches, one into the lesser tubercle, one into the great tubercle. Take care to see that the suture metal is not going through the bone, but at the tendon bone insertion. That is the place where it has the maximum tensile. These two are the workers, so that you can pull any way you want. You can collapse it over each other, you can get it down, you can get it over each other, whatever you want. So these are the working window. So that is to the lesser tubercle, the subscapularis. Always take a double bite so that it doesn't slip off. Once those two are done, you are directly, and you take it apart, you are directly over the fracture site. If required, you can incise along the line of the rotator cuff. That's what we are going to do, because that increases your exposure. We don't need to be bothered because this is in the line. This is akin to your splitting of the patellar tendon for a distal femoral line. So this is 1% concern. You are going to suture it after surgery. So you see the long head of the biceps, that's the lighthouse, that's what you will know that we are in the midline. And then just put a periasteal elevator, cob elevator in the fracture site, lift it up. All this the head of the proximal humerus will be impacted down. So lift it up, and then whether you want varus or valgus, depending on how the configuration is. Firing 1 or 2 K wires through the proximal, to the head into the glenoid. Ream the canal, because our patients have a lesser profile. Even up to 9 mm we can ream the proximal fragment, because the nail is only 160 centimeters. If you can see, that's the elbow joint. A 9 mm reamer goes easily up to, say, proximal half of the ream. Then this is the guide pin for the entry. We need to be just in front of the acromion, just lateral to the long head of biceps. That's the end point. That's what tells us that you are in the midline. Of course, CM is always there. The entry into the head. We need to be sure that it is at least 8 mm away from the fracture, because the reamer is 10 mm, so 5 mm on either side, as we are going to shatter the proximal fragment. This is a 10 mm reamer for the entry. And that's how it sees after the entry. That's the entry of the guide pin. And that's what comes out once you take a reamer. We can use this back and plug the gap if we will be using this. So that's the nail, a straight nail with the multiple proximal options. I will skip through that. So lack of time. That's the 45 degree pattern. This is for the distal locks. Of course, in different multi-angular directions. It's not strict medial lateral. Both are angulated. That's for the 45 degrees pattern. And one misconception is that it might damage the axillary nerve. If you can see, it is at a distance of 5 to 5.5 centimeters from the tip of the nail, and the nerve we all know is 4 centimeters from the subcondylar. So we have an easy OP of 1.5 centimeters. So axillary nerve is not at risk even in urinary perkinence. That's how you insert the nail. Just jiggle it. You are not going to bang it in. Jiggle it and stop it at. There are markings. You can put it 0 mm, 2 mm, 5 mm, or 1 centimeter as need be. And then this is the best part of the nail. After everything, then we get the GT back. In case what's the problem is we need to get all things back into structure. We need to file in K wires, and these are going to be coming in the way of seating your implant. Whereas in the nail, you get the nail inside first and then get the GT and the LT over. Of course, we have the sutures beforehand, but then it seems so nothing comes in the way of your instrumentation. For the proximal locking, calcas and the This screw has holes for both sutures through the rotator cuff as well as for the screwing screw. That's how a screwing screw will look like. And that's the screwing screw at the top. In elderly, we prefer to have a screwing screw because of the osteoporosis. That's very good question. So, lack of time will not show clear examples. Can be done in 2-part, 3-part, 4-part, also in head split fractures with good results. Even in elderly, dislocated, neglected. In a head split, this one case I would like to head split in a 32-year-old gentleman who was a software engineer. We discussed the options and did a nailing in him. This was a severe post-op. This is him at 6 months. No avian for his good luck. That's him at 6 months. You can see the scar on the right side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif, for the nice presentation. Now we have a panel discussion. I invite all the speakers to come onto the dais, and I invite Dr. Naveen Thakkar.
Here is that take a proper view, assess the fractures and treat them. Not all of them require surgeries or putting wires across. Okay? And they get good results if you treat them correctly. The point is to get serial X-rays in these patients. If you don't get serial X-rays, they will be displacement of the fragments. At 1 week or 2 weeks, then you'll be finding it difficult to salvage it later. Okay? So have a very low threshold for CT scan and insist on a correct imaging. And 80% of proximal humerus fractures can be treated non-operatively. Now, 42-year-old gentleman, hypertensive, fell off the stairs. Salesh, what do you want?
Regular CT scan.
CT scan is not much different from what you're seeing right now.
One is with the 4-part fracture. Most of things are in place. Discuss with the patient what is the need.
What are your fixation? Okay. Anybody else differs from that?
This is a combination of the lateral cortex and the lateral veracity and lateral cortex, central humerus. I think we need to fix it with a filostrate.
What is it? Sir, what is the advantage of fixing it with a filostrate?
Here you can mount it nicely with a plate and fix it, and you can also suture the muscles which are displaced or pending an early mobilization.
Okay, anybody else differs? Anybody for conservative?
It's can be treated conservatively.
Then you can treat conservatively, followed by serial X-rays.
Conservative. So one thing I have a golden rule in proximal humerus fractures: if the ball is looking at the socket, if the tuberosity is below the shaft, and the ball is sitting on the shaft, leave it alone. Don't touch it. This I left it non-operatively. He became full range of motion, but he took a bit longer. It took about 4 months to recover, but he got full motion. I did not operate on them. So the message from here is that even if they are young patients, even if you see the combination, the alignment is okay, and you're not going to better the alignment with fixation, please do not fix. And serial X-rays, as Raghu mentioned, is very, very important. This is a 35-year-old dentist. This is a classic presentation I get in my clinic. Fell off the bike, had pain in the shoulder. So what do? You talk to your friend, orthopedic surgeon. He looked at this X-ray and he said, "Oh, it all looks fine. Carry on with your work. You're not doing work." But his pain was increasing.
Speak close to the mic.
His pain was increasing. He talked to the orthopedic surgeon, he gave him some painkillers and said, "Carry on with your work, you don't need any mobilization, just get on with it." So his pain was increasing, but he just took pain medication, carried on. He came to me a month later. So do you see anything there which is alarming?
Any other views?
Other views also there is not much, you don't see much on the X-ray.
There is a clavicle fracture that is evident.
No, this is not a clavicle fracture, it is just a view. No, it is just a view.
May not be there.
Okay. Actually it was there is a very faint line there. And this is a very common thing. What I am trying to tell you is that examine the patient properly. Just looking at X-rays will not help you. If you feel he was tender on the graded tuberosity and clinical examination, again, passive range of motion was full and he was not able to actively elevate the arm and he had a rotator cuff. So what is the diagnosis? You don't need an X-ray for this.
Yeah.
It's a graded tuberosity fracture. Okay. So repeat an X-ray after 1 week. Don't put them and don't ignore them for 1 month and 2 months and then leave them alone. Unfortunately, this chap had a displaced graded tuberosity fracture. And what is the mode of fixation for a graded tuberosity fracture? Let's start with the J. This particular fracture. How would you like to fix this?
It is just easy one fixation with the rotator cuff repair. It's mainly the rotator cuff attachment. Reattach the tuberosity.
So you are going to pass the sutures from the rotator cuff tendon.
Yeah.
Where are you going to attach it to?
Yeah.
Attach it to where?
Attach it to the shaft, the ankle.
The ankle.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lateral row ankle. It's a tension ankle. What you do is you pass the thread through here. Not the econ. The econ will not go through the ankle. You take a fiber wire and then put it through the ankle and get good compression. So the message from this is not screws, but fix it like a rotator cuff. Use anchors and the lateral row and the medial row also if you require. Recovering from it. But again, the message here is if you have a GD fracture, very low threshold to fix them, especially after a fracture. 56-year-old RTA, that was the injury. So what's the plan for 56-year-old RTA? Fit and well, gentlemen. Very muscular. Fixation pediaplasty. Okay. What other immediate plan? It's not a smoking non planning, but more than the 3D stick is.
You need how much the bone to hold. Correct. Otherwise you have to change for replacement.
Correct. So that's around, you need around approach. Retropectoral approach or
Retropectoral, that is our most.
Retropectoral approach. Do not be on these fractures, this particular fracture.
So identify the structure and study. Make the visual head there, absolutely right. But Surya's muscle, forget first phase. This is not extreme approach, but this is enough to do the procedure one time. Now I am in the joint. Depress segment and the event is coming out. You can see the anterior surface depressed. Normally you should not be able to see. Once you see it, can be depressed. So elevate, you don't see. Now first round and then as you elevate endoidal, you elevate posterior. Elevate in the after round. And picks up the KR on the side. You can see. You can see the KR. Going under the fragment and the result. So you know your eye is not damaging anything. You just hold the fragment fill up with the chronos or a bone surface or bone graft. This is fill up cavity. Now this is the area you have to understand. This much is area of the abdomen. This is the region you are going to operate. So this one what is again a big introduction to posterior condyle. Bone position. You can see incision now and tip the head. So this is the way you make an incision. Change a bit and you will see the now. Retract the letter of external image medial and you will be able to find the soleus muscle over the fibula. Cut soleus muscle like this and make it white, fibula is white, no muscle to be right there. Then you can retract it very nicely. You can see and then we are right over now. You can see white articular surface lower down. Articular surface is there which can be elevated, filled up with the graft and put a KR under it. Template. So in view of X-ray for comparison, so you can do elevation, picture and the result and put over 6. Other case, this is a gentleman had an injury of the period fracture before 8 years and when he was 17. Now he is 24 and he got another vehicle accident after removal plant and got a fracture post of the condyle. So this is another video of this same. So this is second revision. Same approach. So this is the incident I am drawing. Now start from distal to proximal always. But this patient from distal to proximal, not on lateral now. So you will get the nerve in between. And you just run your finger under it, you can separate. 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 Very simple and easy. This is the nerve. Now dissect the patient parallel to nerve. So you can be shifted a little bit later. Now later have just a movement. Identify and detect. Now cut the soleus muscle from posterior surface. Cut till you reach the middle part of the fibula. Distally be careful, don't enter deep. Now you will see that identify. Coming out of the sector. So this is the result from the soleus fibula head. You release the soleus like this and put a slide on the middle part of the fibula. This is anterior. You can go under the artery, put a blade under it and one screw. Not here that. Now the vein is the vector of it. Difference condylization. The vector is fully joined. But to the KR on the side and it is maintaining the reduction. Now you know filler. Filler. So use a gouge, broad gouge. And then just slide the graft inside. This is real time, 20 seconds. You cut the gouge from effect and the thing will be positioned. And you hear the big condyle and big man in here. So, enter the graft and this is the posterior diagram. So, this was the posterior X-ray. So, this is now new grade is already introduced by Chinese people. This is not like they will make the smaller version of the graft leg. This is specific plate for the posterior condyle. It is a smaller version of graft leg. It is quite thin and malleable. So direct approach is better for treatment of posterior condyle. It changes outcome from better reduction, excision and functional outcome. And reduction of articular fracture will improve the outcome. So it is a road which is less traveled. But if you hang around, you can reach to destination easily. Thank you.
Small articular distal femur piece. There is a small defect in the distal femur.
Yeah. Just one over. So there is a 90 down is curiosity. It is two pieces. First one fragment, big one from
the medial patella.
This is this. You got MRI also. ACL and PCL both are intact. That is the reason. If this cannot occur without this nothing. But when patient came, he came with the side and knee with this injury. And this is type 2C.
Yes.
What is the?
So lost KY implant, that is the only implant you can use.
And this is the age of the patient, sorry.
Yeah, they have just 10 years.
Yeah, so yes, with the guarded prognosis, you can fix it by posterior approach. But these fragments are pretty small. They can undergo aging.
Right. Oh, but how do you remove the fragments?
That can be done two ways. Either we can remove it, turn the patient posterior and then fix it.
So you will remove from angle approach and you do it with
Maybe, yeah.
To be a bigger disease. If you combine instead of the scope to fragment, it will become significant. Okay. Because these are the type of fragments, not very small.
There is an approach described in humidity.
Yeah.
You go between vastus latalis and bifurcatus. Between basal position, it's you can just go straight on to the lateral, just from the back. And this is one case where we found it with acutracts, acutracts.
That can be the approach. You remove from immediate diaphragm, what put them down, close the root, turn the patient prone, and this is the approach. Medial, determinantly approaching, this is release, and that is the now, circle line. So now it is to be seen, it is not going to come here, it will be distal to the contact. In circle cut, and the biceps fluid is detected medial. Directly there, capsule. This is the defect. One piece fixed, provision will be given. That's two. Second piece fixed. So 2.4 mm 2 Herbert. And then the post effect. Sorry, I don't know, but it's fine. So, that was the unusual. So we always have that any loose fragment in the knee means CT scan and MRI is warranted. That's the message. Any loose fragment, because we don't know from where it has come out. Thank you. Next case. Yes, sir. Anybody, please, one by one, yes. So we can talk about a number of cases.
It is a medial tibial condyle fracture, more of a posteromedial tibial condyle fracture. So we need to look at the skin condition and then look at the signs of any compartment syndrome. And we have to rule out any vascular injury as well. Sometimes isolated medial tibial condyle fracture, the knee joint we have got dislocated and relocated back. So that can cause a vascular injury also.
You may want to be assessed for vascular injury.
Yeah.
Right. It is not like a simple case, low result injury. This is the pattern. This is workpiece type B fracture. Workpiece has described several different fractures, type A, type B, type C. There is no coronal element, and apex is always medial or anteromedial. Because this condyle, once it goes intercondyle line, the apex cannot go posterior. Apex is given medial or anteromedial. So this was the injury, and what should be the fixation?
First, I would like to take a CT scan.
Sir, CT is CT. 3D picture is CT. I mean, there is nothing new. So we have used the progressive axis.
I will do a direct medial approach and then medial locking plate fixation.
Okay. Can a single buttress plate work or locking plate is required?
Yeah, you can use even buttress plate also. The reduction is more important than the type of plate here.
So this is a classical vertical shear fracture of the medial contact, which can be buttressed by single buttress principle. It was the midpoint. The first group got best of the vector line.
You use the T-buttress plate here, but the posterior medial locking plates that you have available, I don't think you get as much of a length. I think you have to 7 hole.
Which one?
The posterior medial locking plates that, you know,
yeah,
300 ones.
Very common holes. Indian indigenous plates are available for 10 holes.
Yeah, but I think those are only up to about 7 hole, I think.
Yeah.
So here you use the tube buttress, which is the right choice because you need a long, the length is
Length is required.
The only possibility is that sometimes it can sublux and go posteriorly if you don't buttress it posteriorly. That's the only thing.
Sir, this is single large condyle. So once you buttress it and get it, you don't have to. Same factor. One piece type C. This is a medial condyle factor, but intra is a lateral condyle factor. Observe it. It is a medial condyle factor, but intra-ventricular it is lateral condyle factor. The only thing you have to observe here is lateral meniscus can be handled as this lateral subsection of the lateral condyle. So again, here the fixation principle will remain the same. The only thing is this is the factor.
More incidents of compartment syndrome in this situation.
More, yeah. And you need one intercondyle supercompression. Extra.
And you may need a distractor to reduce particular this type of factor. You may need a distractor on table, so it should be ready.
And intercondyle clamp was used to cut and maintain the reduction, produce the KMR fix, and then getting working. After adding 100% reduction, plate and screw fix. So there are simple factors. These need engineered medial plate fixation, but all intercondyle cannot be fixed from medial side.
You approach them laterally first and then medial.
No, we got that, we gave traction and we got the reduction. If we don't have, and the money is entered would have been there, then I would have the money is autonomy, got money is allowed and then in that case.
Supposed to be different.
Yeah, it's a suspicion because every accident doesn't show the factor. But lateral accident shows supposed to be correct. So this is a city. 3D city, apex is posterior medial. I is there. And you can see 2D city. So in the posterior medial, this is a core organ factor, classical. So, posterior approach, agree? Like this. So the plate will be like this. And you need this plate can work very well. Very heavy posterior plate is not required in this case because the condyle is very small. Similar, but the only thing is associated ACL injury is there, and there is mild impact on the posterior condyle, which may not be adults, but there is a posterior condyle infection. Medial condyle, coronal fracture, and 90% incidence of associated ACL. Either it is substance or it is polyfracture, because the fracture cannot occur without compression of the tibia anterior. That's why I put the case for that purpose only. Otherwise, everything is same. This is posterior condyle fracture with ACL ever done. Bony ever the posterior and doesn't need any separate address. Unless last fragment is there. This posterior approach. And that is what the middle plate doesn't work here. You need a posterior condyle plate. And posterior plating approach. Yes, sir.
In this, there is a posterolateral fragment as well.
This is a very small fragment.
We have to worry about that, just we can leave.
But this is 2 or 3 millimeter division. We can leave it. If it is more, I will approach to the same approach. We go to the next like that one.
Oblique plate. Oblique plate.
So, the message is centroidal plate cannot fix this contact. Next rule principle cannot be applied. So, best way is reduce the press like this. So, posterior condyle should be treated like this. Not this one. Sir. This is common to medial condyle. There was something.
Fracture injury, both condyles.
Any fracture dislocation, I think the soft tissue will be very high. We need to, and we cannot just leave it, we need to span the knee joint and then reduce the spilling of the tibial condyle by giving a sideward pressure and then putting on an external fixator, wait for the swelling to come down fractures, limb can come up with a lot of blisters also. But once everything settles down, only we can approach. And here there is a medial contact is vertically split into two fragments. So definitely we need to open by medial approach, make the two fragments into one, and then secure it to the shaft. Then we can look at the lateral side as well.
So here are three fragments. How is posterior physical attachment?
Yeah.
Physical attachment. So there is a big fragment. The medial contact is going in two parts. Anteromedial, posterior, and both are out of it. So we did like this. Traction, anteromedial contact got reduced. Anteromedial vertebral plate percutaneously. You can see that incident. So it is a common template for reduction of the posterior contact. Okay? Then to make the bishop known, posterior approach and double plate.
This fixation is done how many days after injury?
Yes, sir?
This fixation is done how many days after injury?
5 days.
5 days.
It did not develop any blister, so I opened on 5th day.
Immediately what was done for the knee subluxation?
Immediately we just give traction and reduce it and then put it in a brace. It stayed. It was not that until they got dislocating again.
Yeah.
And then I was put a fixator, kept ready, but it was stable after reduction.
But there was no skin problem.
There was no skin problem. You can see I am pronouncing today. This is the thing that is. Lucky, of course. This is post-fracture. So, one plate on posterior border, one plate on posterior ligament, and one is anteromedial plate. These are antitropic way and sura. We remove the implant, actually, and this is clear for impact again. So all the elements of medial contact are addressed. So you get again anatomical restorations and proper external is a good outcome. One more. You have 5-6 minutes, so we can do these two cases that's good.
There is a depression.
The one is a reduction on X-ray. We want to take one time. Posterior contact and this is the
I think posterior approach through the fracture window itself.
Yeah, this is the combination. So we can place all the fragments accordingly around. Posterior contact, posterior contact diffuse is there, and EC level is there. Now what should be planned?
The same fracture window, only you can elevate this posterior approach.
Single approach, double approach.
Dual approach.
Double approach. Posterior and
posterior or single approach can be done, but the elevation of that posterior lateral will require separate posterior lateral approach.
See, here only one thing is this thing. The rim of the lateral near the head is intact. So it is middle half of the posterior contact.
Yeah.
So you should be able to apply from posterior side.
Only posterior lateral. You cannot go from medial side.
What we can do is we can elevate that fragment through the posterior approach only. The gland is spread out. We start the posterior. Put a punch elevate that. The skin that is going from posterior to the approach.
So they are able to see that. Yeah. So this is the plan. Posterior lateral first. The moment you release posterior contact, the figure will come posterior, that part. And you will be able to see posterior contact. Then loose. Then posterior contact elevation, grafting, and plate. That is the plan. We single posterior extensor explosion. Roll position, down incision from the knee to the vertebra. In the flip coming. Just to make the head see. Retracted. You can see in the floor popliteus muscle. Popliteus cut, and you can see the posterior contact fracture. I have not cut the popliteus proximally. Now you cut down, then it is released. And inotomy of the medial health is this optic is inotomy.
To get the exposure.
To get the exposure. This is the vessel between the popliteus and the gastrocnemius head. So, in that case, you are underneath the popliteus muscle and over the bone, no danger. fracture. Okay. Now middle leading is done. Now once the middle lead is fixed, you can see the portion of condyle door. You open the door and you will be able to start the surface in front of your eyes. Elevator. This is elevation. Now you can see right is under the surface. Elevated and plated from the same approach. Both plates are fixed. Now they get released and you can see the vessel. So before release of tourniquet, after release of tourniquet, vessels are fixed. Right? So after release of tourniquet, the field should be like as if tourniquet is on. If there is a bleeding, that means you have punctured the major vessel. There are no other bleeders. There are no other bleeders in this area. So only one can bleed discovered artery. Or vein. Stick to the bone. Yeah. Closer. First of X-ray. And forward follow-up. These were done. The interesting case that I have 6 all cases and not done. Because it is last 1 or 2 minutes. Anybody, please.
Like depression of the lateral tibial condyle. You can just go through the CT scan if possible. If there is no CT, then
posterior depression. Yes, it is posterior depression is anterior depression. Both sides are.
Yeah.
This is commutator lateral contact with anterior part, posterior part, everything. So if you put this plate and this plate, then you can fix completely. So this is the approach. Lateral position. Patella, velocity, joint line, uvula head, and given when this is very posteriorly, cannot be seen. And cannot get it. So this is the arrow showing that this is a small leg of the posterior body. And there is a depressed cartilage inside. The picture. Yeah. Elevate. Give us the part and maintain the elevation. Posterior method training was the proximal through the fixed. Only button to close the window. And you can see in later the plate is straight now. Now let's close with the fixed. Give that out. Another after taken. Another thing is done. And this is 10 follow.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Please, sir.
If this patient in your hospital or any hospital 30 years ago,
I was not doing that much.
no CT scans, no posterior approach, what happened to them?
We have to see, we have to call all the patients before 30-40 years, not done anything and see the follow-up what has happened. That will happen to you also.
I think most of the time in the knee scoring system, we are talking about Rasmussen's score. Rasmussen was in 1973, and I think in that particular paper, they were accepting 10 mm depressions. And then they said it is acceptable. But I don't think in this day and age, we can actually evaluate our patient outcomes with those scores.
One of the other concerns about the posterolateral plate is division when we do a TKI.
Yeah.
How are we going to address these plates?
I have removed the plate, no problem, I can remove it in 20 minutes.
Yeah. You have to do 2 stages.
Very easy, there is no problem.
2 stages.
No problem, you can make the patient close. This is called same incident. You go in, there is another plate which you have dissected. So go through that plate and you can remove the plate. I have removed 4 plates.
It will be a good bed for TKI. It will be a good bone stock for a TKI.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.